One Piece Tianlong Prodigal Son, Chapter 261-280. Chapter 261 Bald Sea Monster. Feeling the vitality of the body begin to dissipate, Vanderdeeken's eyes widened, and everything around him began to blur. No, _ICANT, can't die here, Vanderdeeken said in pain. Bai Xing, who was sitting on the ground praying, has been watching this scene in shock. The life in the hard shell tower is still vivid in her mind, she can't imagine it, and she fell down like this after avoiding the devil for nearly 10 years. Lord L. Washung is really amazing. Bai Xing looked at Tang Zheng's back and said it in a low voice. Bai Xing is very clear that from this moment, she has been free. The nightmare that has plagued her for nearly 10 years has also been shaken off. After the dream she had been dreaming of all along was realized, it made her feel like she was living in a dream. Tang Zheng quietly looked at Vanderdeeken, who was full of rubble. After a while, he turned around and said to Bai Xing, "No one is bothering you now, you can continue." After listening to Bai Xing, he shook his head and said, "It's done, thank you, Lord Elva, _." After being interrupted by Vanderdeeken, Shirahoshi didn't have the intention to continue, and just looked at the cemetery of Princess Otahime with a dazed expression. Tang Zheng nodded and smiled. "How are you happy?" Bai Xing nodded vigorously with a 140 nod, and the beautiful face turned up and knelt down with a sweet smile. At this moment, there was a sudden tremor in the forest of the sea. "Captain Deacon, where are you?" A strange and harsh voice came, accompanied by heavy footsteps. Then, in the sight of Tang Zheng and others, a body the size of a fort suddenly appeared. After Tang Zheng took a closer look, he realized that the visitor was a bald sea monster with a very slippery face. It's just that this figure is too terrifying. It is definitely comparable to a small island. Vanderdeeken, who was suppressed by the gravel, heard this sound, and he, who was already on the verge of death, instantly regained a trace of anger. "Poseidon, kill them, avenge me," Vanderdeeken shouted with all his strength. After saying this, Vanderdeeken's raised hand slowly fell. The original ruthless, trivial eyes gradually lost their luster. As if feeling something, the bald sea monster suddenly shouted, "Wow, Captain!" As he moved his footsteps, he quickly moved in the direction of Tang Zheng. Due to its huge size, the bald sea monster makes the surrounding water tumble as it moves. After seeing this scene, Princess Bai Xing immediately covered her mouth per bar with her hand, with a hint of horror in her eyes. Among the mermaids, her size is also huge, but compared to the sea monster with a beautiful head in front of her, she still feels a bit bigger than an ant elephant. "This terrifying thing, is he under Lord Dakin?" Princess White Star said with a paper voice. Tang Zheng nodded, glanced at Daikon, who had lost his breath, and said, "You step back." After Bai Xing heard it, he immediately complied, moving his body to keep a distance from Tang Zheng. The bald sea monster hurried towards Tang Zheng, and every step would cause vibrations around him. Seeing the bald sea monster approaching step by step, Tang Zheng moved his feet and kicked a few huge rubble towards the sea monster in the same way he dealt with Vanderdeeken. The gravel immediately followed the current and shot towards the bald sea monster, creating a slender water mark on the bottom of the sea. After seeing this, the bald sea monster didn't dodge or dodge, grabbed the palm of his hand and waved it directly at the gravel. A few meters wide gravel, after approaching the hand of the bald sea monster, was like a few grains of sand, and was instantly broken into pieces. "Wow, Captain Dakin!" After breaking the gravel that Tang Zheng kicked at him, the bald sea monster roared again. The thick and short hand immediately raised high, and immediately hit the direction where Tang Zheng was. This kind of giant creature, first of all, no matter what their strength is, but just that strength is enough to make people daunting. Seeing this scene, Tang Zheng stomped his feet, and immediately jumped up from the bottom of the sea. Using the ability of the moon step, he quickly approached the bald sea monster. The punch from the bald sea monster was instantly dodged by Tang Zheng, and his figure passed his fist. Immediately afterwards, Tang Zheng paid the back of the bald sea monster's hand and ran towards its head. The size of the bald sea monster was so big that when Tang Zheng walked on his hands and stomach, it was like walking on the Columbus. Wow! After seeing Tang Zheng dodging his punch, the bald sea monster immediately retracted his palm. Looking at Tang Zheng, who was constantly flashing in his stomach, the other hand immediately covered Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng's eyes flashed, and his body immediately jumped up from the bald sea monster's hand and stomach, standing in front of it in the air. Land-foot-long flash. Under Tang Zheng's feet, a terrifying force quickly gathered, and then he kicked the bald sea monster. After this foot appeared, the entire seabed seemed to have a pale color. The surrounding seawater also fluctuated violently at the same time, and all the fishes began to flee here in horror. A huge slash appeared in front of Tang Zheng, with a palpitating force, and slashed towards the bald sea monster's face. After the slash appeared, it immediately turned into a long shape several feet wide. On the way of the burst shot, this long-shaped slash seemed to start roaring fiercely. When the bald sea monster saw this scene, he immediately stretched out his hands and tried to resist the attack. But when the slash approached, it penetrated his hands instantly, leaving 2 terrifying scars. After the penetration, the long-shaped slash did not disappear, but continued to go towards his head. Under the horrified gaze of the bald sea monster, he passed directly through his mouth and shot out from the back of his head. After all this was formed, the long-shaped slash turned into a silver light, covering the entire seabed. Chapter 262 Militants. Chapter 262 Militants. Chapter 262 Militants. When Tang Zheng was fighting with the bald sea monster, a large number of murlocs suddenly appeared at the entrance of Long Palace. These murlocs were the ones who had agreed to attack Long Miyaji in the Murloc Street, Hody and others. At this time, these fish people are all armed with money and profit, and their emotions are extremely high, and they are ready to attack. Hody, who was standing on the giant fish, glanced at the large number of murlocs behind him, and said, "Listen to me, today is the anniversary of the unification of all the murlocs on the island. Including the mermaid. If the murlocs always maintain the old, outdated ideas of the past, then all this will not be changed." When he said this, Hody clenched his fist suddenly. "Those human beings who can't even breathe in the sea should be the inferior race under our rule. We fish are supreme." Hody encouraged the people behind him. The murlocs behind him suddenly burst into cheers. Looking at this scene, Hody grinned and raised his hand slowly. Seeing his action, the rest of the mermaids immediately slackened and stopped cheering in unison. A look of slackness flashed in Hody's eyes, and he continued, "So far, this has been wrong history, let us correct it today. It is impossible for murlocs and mermen to coexist with humans, and our new murloc pirates are the only inheritance of Along's ambition." Hody's words resonated with the people behind him, and they all shouted in agreement. Looking at the emotions of the crowd, the officers of the new Fishman pirates also spoke up. This time, the Sun Pirates Jinbei group just happened to be absent, which is our best chance. Long Miyagi's fighting power is only Neptune, the god of the sea, and the 3 brothers, Xingxing, Wangxing, and Rangxingxing. Therefore, as long as these 4 people are suppressed, the Neptune army will not be enough, and then kill the Tianlong army at the entrance of Fishman Island. We're going to eat all of their meat, Kika. If I were to slaughter them, I would definitely do what I was ordered to do." Seeing that the morale of his subordinates had been boosted, Hody's face also showed an excited smile. "Then, let's start. The cadres of the new Fishman pirates, each of them will go to capture a major area. Starting from today, the Long Palace Kingdom will be destroyed. The ruler of this seabed will become us." Hody raised his palm to say yes. As his words fell, the surrounding fish were all eager to try. Following Hody's order, the cadres of the new Murloc pirates left in batches with a large number of Murlocs, and attacked Long Miyagi from different positions. The rest of the Murlocs stayed by Hody's side. Hody looked at the entrance of Long Palace City in front of him, a ferocious color flashed in his eyes, and a drop of water immediately condensed in his hand. Hit the water. After the water droplet appeared, Hody immediately threw it into the bubble circle at the entrance of Long Miyaji. A powerful impact immediately erupted from the bubble circle, directly destroying this population. Looking at this scene, the fish people standing behind Hody were even more excited. The strength of the leader gave them greater confidence in their hearts. Hody looked at the population that was forcibly broken, and said with a smile, "It's really vulnerable, let Neptune see our strength." Under the leadership of Hody, a large group of murlocs rushed towards the population, and walked through this passage unimpeded. Hody and the others immediately appeared at the population of the castle. The guards guarding the castle immediately discovered the Hody group. There were dead people. How on earth did these people get in? Could it be the voice just now? After seeing this scene, the guards immediately retreated to the castle and walked towards Neptune. It was reported to King Neptune that a large number of lovers appeared outside the castle, and they acted very urgently. The guard knelt down in front of Neptune to make sense. 2 for flowers. Neptune sitting on the throne, after hearing this, his rich eyebrows suddenly wrinkled. What happened? How can there be a handsome person? While saying this, Neptune turned his attention to Old Bard and the others, and he thought that it was the palace guards of the Holy Family of Etrich who attacked in. Could it be Her Majesty Elva? Has something happened with the White Star? The guard who knelt down in front of Neptune immediately said, "It's a villain in Hody Street." Neptune said solemnly, "Then inform the city guards and ask the city guards to stop them and not let them come to disturb the distinguished guests." Yes. The guards retreated immediately. "I went out to see," a palace minister next to Neptune said, and walked out of the castle with such a guard. There will be rebellions in a kingdom, which shows how failed the rulers are. The Empress Hancock raised her head and said, "Neptune." Not far from the Empress, Shiliu of the Rain was holding a large cigar, looked at Old Bud and said, "Are we going to help?" "Haven't come back yet, so none of them can call the shots." After pondering for a while, Old Bud said, "According to His Highness's temperament, he wouldn't be so busy, but now there's a White Star Princess, so the old slave can't figure out what he's thinking. Then let's take a look first. If I want to make a move, I can go and come back," said Shiliu of the Rain. "He is addicted to killing, and can't wait to go out and kill immediately, and he also has this strength." Valdo glanced at Shiliu of the Rain and said, "I should be the one to take action." "No, it's up to the old slave. Neptune." Everyone in the castle looked at these people. Why are they all militants? Chapter 263 No Miyagi was captured, 4th more. Chapter 263 No Miyagi was captured, 4th more. Chapter 263 No Miyagi was captured, 4th more. In the forest of the sea, Tangjung's long slash burst through the mouth of the bald sea monster, and the entire forest of the sea turned into a silvery white. It looks very heart-palpitating. Wow! The bald sea monster immediately let out a painful cry, and the huge figure slowly fell down. Along with his fall, a few teeth the size of a hill floated out of his mouth. Under the power of the long flash, the tough teeth of the bald sea monster were directly cut off. "Ah, my front teeth are broken," the bald sea monster cried loudly. Boom! Immediately after, his huge figure fell to the bottom of the sea, causing a violent shaking. After the bald sea monster fell, he immediately covered his mouth per bar and shouted, "It hurts, 870. It hurts." Although Tangjung's attack was not fatal, it also had a certain impact. After the Achi that has been strengthened again, now Tangjung's strength is not what it used to be. After seeing the bald sea monster fall, Tangjung didn't stop there. His figure disappeared from the place in an instant, and walked in the direction where the bald sea monster fell. The strange figure is really too big. Even Tangjung, who has 6 styles and a shaved one, took a lot of time to reach the bald sea monster. Tangjung stood in front of his shang, his body jumped up again, and his toes suddenly turned sharply. Arashi's spiral blade. Under Tangjung's feet, a spiral blade of light dozens of meters wide was immediately formed. Like a terrifying long tornado, it suddenly appeared from the air, and then headed towards the bald sea monster below. Ah ah ah. After the light blade like a long roll approached the bald sea monster, there was a sound of meat slicing. It looks extremely dull in the sea. Ah, it hurts to death. The bald sea monster immediately cried out in pain. As his voice appeared, a large area of red began to appear in the sea water, covering the surrounding site. Princess Baxing tightly covered her mouth back, and she, who has been living in the hard shell tower, has never seen such a scene. Large swaths of sea water have been soaked red, and it is extremely terrifying in the eyes of Bai Xing. Fortunately, because of the current, the blood did not flow towards Tang Zheng, but was quickly rushed in the opposite direction. It hurts me, corpse bald sea monster kept screaming. Under the severe pain, his hand was involuntarily pressed to the wound on his body, but when his hand touched the spiral light blade, he was immediately cut. Tang Zheng watched this scene, slowly falling from the air, following the struggle of the bald sea monster, and walked towards his head. Brother Yi Dao. Tang Zheng used the combination of shaving and moon steps to draw a string of sharp blades while walking on the bald sea monster. When the bald sea monster was struggling, he was instantly cut by the light blade of this channel, making his body covered with a large amount of damage. Die to me, you damned human! The bald sea monster roared loudly. Intimidation super entry. After the bald sea monster finished speaking, he suddenly opened his mouth per bar and took a sharp suck at the surrounding sea water. A huge suction force appeared from his mouth in an instant, and even Tang Zheng from Shaojin, because of the flow of sea water, could not help but go towards his mouth. As the sea water sucked, the bald sea monster swelled up in circles, and every time it swelled, it would be accompanied by a terrifying vibration. You like smoking so much, right? Tang Zheng's eyes turned cold, and his feet moved again. Lanzhou group of wolves with stars. Under Tang Zheng's feet, more than 10 wolf-shaped slashes appeared in an instant. Each wolf-shaped slash was more than 2 meters wide, roaring towards the mouth of the bald sea monster. Because of its suction, the wolf-shaped slash instantly entered the mouth of the bald sea monster, and a large blood mist erupted inside. Make the surrounding sea water more colorful. Whoa! The bald sea monster's cry became even more shocking, and after the throat was cut, it was impossible for him to make a full voice at all. And because of the pain, the originally swollen figure also shrunk. Tang Zheng also followed the current and came to the head of the bald sea monster, and his body jumped high instantly. Go to accompany your Captain Dakin. Tang Zheng, who jumped up from the air, looked at the sea monster lying on the seabed and said. Afterwards, Tang Zheng's fist was immediately hardened by the armed color, and the entire fist shone with a jet black luster. Immediately afterwards, the whole person hit the head of the bald sea monster from top to bottom. In Tang Zheng's hands, a terrifying energy was emitted, and the surrounding sea water was also cut open because of this ability. The entire seabed seemed to be cut in half by Tang Zheng, and a huge ripple of water emerged from where Tang Zheng passed. Bang! Tang Zheng's fist fell on the head of the bald sea monster in an instant. Under his punch, the head of the bald sea monster sank directly, and because of this terrifying power, the seabed within 100 meters of Fengtu fell into a big pit. Ah! The bald sea monster let out a repairing cry, because the head was sunk, and the eyes were almost squeezed out. A large amount of blood flowed out of his mouth and feet, and the breath of life slowly dissipated. Princess Bai Xing watched this scene in shock. Although she knew that the Lord Tianlong was very powerful, she did not expect to be so powerful. Lord Elva. Princess Bai Xing stared at Tang Zheng tightly. She still couldn't believe that the devil and his subordinates who had kept her away for nearly 10 years would die so easily. Tang Zheng walked down from the bald sea monster's body, looked at Bai Xing and said, "Okay, no one will dare to beat you again from now on." "Thank you, Lord Elva." A touch of emotion surged in Shirahoshi's heart. Tang Zheng Weiwei smiled, and when he was about to speak, the phone worm on his body rang, and Tang Zheng picked it up immediately. Your Highness, Long Miyaji has been captured, are we going to take action? Chapter 264 Breaking Through the Gate. Chapter 264 Breaking Through the Gate. Chapter 264 Breaking Through the Gate. Just after finishing the bald sea monster, Tang Zheng heard Old Bud's words, and his rouge immediately wrinkled. What's going on? Tang Zheng asked the phone bug. Old Bud's voice continued to come from the phone bug. It is said that a man named Hody Jones assembled a group of villains. Under their attack, Long Gongcheng's guards were completely defeated. Not an opponent. Bai Xing, who was standing beside Tang Zheng, naturally heard this, and looked at Tang Zheng anxiously. Is there anything wrong with my father? How can this happen? What are they trying to do? Princess White Star asked. King Neptune is all right, but the three princes have all participated in the battle, and they don't seem to be the opponents of those murlocs. Old Bard continued. After Bai Xing heard this, he immediately said nervously, Lord Elva, what should we do now? Tang Zheng glanced at Bai Xing and said to the phone bug, wait for me to come back. Old Bud immediately understood. His Highness's thought was to tell them not to take action for the time being. Tang Zheng did this with the thought of putting pressure on Neptune. After all, he was going to make a decision for this woman, Bai Xing. Not to mention Bai Xing's appearance, just because she is one of the three ancient weapons, possessing the power of Sea King Poseidon, Tang Zheng will never give her to others. The three ancient weapons have existed since ancient times, and they have the title of God. Any one of them has the power to destroy the world. Tang Zheng must control it. At this time, Princess Baxing flew back to Long Palace City with all her heart. After seeing Tang Zheng hanging up the phone, she immediately asked, Lord Elva, shall we go back now? Tang Zheng nodded and said, of course, if there is a problem with King Neptune, the goods I purchased will not be returned. After hearing this, Princess Bai Xing was moved for a while. Her eyes flashed with a glittering sparkle as she looked at Tang Zheng and said, Lord Elva, thank you. Then, without waiting for Tang Zheng to speak, Shen Shot directly wrapped Tang Zheng in his hands, and then put him on Shang's mouth. Sha. Megalo immediately swam over and picked up Shirahoshi. Tang Zheng Wei smiled and did not object, lying on Bai Xing's body, enjoying the comfort of this moment. At the same time that the two returned to Long Palace, all the towns of Fishman Island welcomed other officers of the new Fishman pirates. The Murlocs and mermen in the town watched in horror at this group of evil shakers walking out of the Murloc street. It's finally time to realize our wish, let's have a quiet fight, said a Murloc cadre with 8 hands and stomachs. Following his words, the Murlocs of the new Murloc pirates cheered one by one and killed them in the town. With the beginning of this scene, there is a big battle in various important areas of Fishman Island. A large number of guards also began to fight with Hody's men, and a series of urgent reports were also passed to Long Miyaji, but at this time Long Miyaji was also a little overwhelmed. In front of the castle of Long Palace City, a large number of guards have fallen here, and even the three princes have a lot of injuries. Hody, you villain, why do you do this? The Star Princess said to Hody, who was not far away, covering their wounds. A cold smile appeared on Hody Jones' face, and he said, Jinxing, you Fishman Island shame, you want to live in peace with human beings. What a foolish disguise. Blanket Star looked at him and said, this is determined by the direction of the world, the mother will not be wrong. Hody's eyes flashed, and then he said, Auto-G, hee. Underscore. After Hody smiled coldly, his figure disappeared from the place in an instant, and the next moment he appeared in the sky above Jinxing. Murloc Karate Kai Teiko. A terrifying force quickly condensed in Hody's hands, and the surrounding moisture seemed to be evacuated in an instant. Seeing this, the two princes standing next to Blanket Xing immediately rushed over and protected Jian Xing together. Brother Wang, be careful. A cruel smile appeared on Hody's face, and the force in his hand immediately attacked the three princes. Blanket Star and others saw this and immediately shot back. This attack from Hody's hand immediately erupted with a terrifying impact. 9 stars and the others were immediately knocked flying when they came into contact with this attack, and the 3 of them spurted a mouthful of blood in the air. It wasn't until Shan Shang hit the Long Palace castle that he stopped. After seeing the defeat of the 3 princes, the surrounding Long Palace guards were all horrified. Can they still defeat such a formidable opponent? Really strong, Boss Hody. Defeat the Neptune army. The members of the new Murloc pirates were all excited after seeing how powerful Hody was. Listening to the cheers of his subordinates, the laughter on Hody's face became even stronger. With a large group of people behind them, they walked towards Long Palace City. When the 3 of them collapsed on the ground, they immediately wanted to stand up. But Hody's men were faster, and immediately controlled the 3 people who fell on the ground and tied the 3 princes. Hody walked to the entrance of the castle alone. Seeing that the gate of the castle was tightly closed, he suddenly reached out and pressed the gate of the castle. Under everyone's eyes, Hody pressed the castle's hand and slammed it. The solid castle gate immediately had a crack, and the crack soon followed the gate towards the wall next to it. Under his grasp, the entire castle began to shake. After seeing this scene, the 3 princes were all shocked. How terrifying is this kind of arm strength? The members of the new Fishman pirates also looked at their boss Hody in shock, and one of them said, "Isn't this the strength of not taking the medicine? It's clear that I have been able to do this without using the poisonous medicine, S___." Then, under the horrified eyes of everyone, Hody roared softly, and the stone castle gate instantly became torn apart. Neptune, ___. Hody approached the castle and looked at the man on the throne and made sense. Chapter 265 How are you thinking about it? Chapter 265 How are you thinking about it? Chapter 265 How are you thinking about it? Neptune sitting on the throne looked at Hody walking into the castle, with a deep frown on his brows. Hody Jones, Neptune said in a deep voice. Looking at Neptune on the throne, Hody burst into laughter. Incompetent Neptune, the kingdom of Long Palace begins today and ends here. Hody said. Neptune. Hody swept his gaze to Old Bard and others, and when he saw the female Emperor Hancock, his pupils shrank. Pirate Empress, Hody whispered. The reputation of the King's Chihuahai is known to the whole world, and he is no exception. But apart from the Empress, Hody knew nothing about Old Bard and Shilyu of the Rain. The world-shattering war on the top of the war, not everyone will pay attention, at least Hody did not. In his eyes, he only cares about the future rule of Fishman Island, and he has been working hard for this purpose. After hearing Hody Jones's words, the Queen cast a glance at him and did not speak. Hancock always chose to ignore such characters. Seeing the reaction of the Empress, Hody didn't bother, and there was a strange smile on his face. Then slowly moving towards the direction of the castle, Shen stretched out a hand, and a watermark condensed in his hand. After seeing his action, the Murlocs standing beside Hody immediately scattered. Not good, go, these droplets are one. Get down, Boss Hody is going to use that trick. The people standing beside Hody all spoke in horror. Seeing the people around him like this, Hody shook a silent smile, and then raised his hand behind him. Suddenly, there was a thumping sound from his body. Neptune, who was sitting on the throne, suddenly looked at this scene with a solemn expression, and the other palace ministers also quickly walked to his side. When Hody saw this, his raised hand suddenly slashed forward, and a flash of white light quickly flashed in front of him. Immediately afterwards, the water traces originally condensed in the hands immediately let go and moved towards the large-scale support in the castle. When the large water droplets fly in the air, they also become a water rib, leading to everyone in the castle. In the blink of an eye, large water droplets approached everyone, and the week-long palace guards penetrated their bodies in an instant. When Neptune saw this, his eyes suddenly opened. But he was too large to dodge at all, and was instantly hit by a large number of water droplets, and a trace of pain appeared on his face. The water droplets shot by Hody's move are like a torrential rain, extremely dense. But in addition to shooting at Neptune and others, many water droplets also flew towards Old Bard and others. Old Bud and Waldo both continued to pour their teacups into their mouths as if they didn't see it. On the other hand, Shilyu of the Rain held a big cigar in his mouth, and Jiyu gave a cruel smile, and then grabbed the sword beside him. Everyone has not seen how he shot. In this space, a red light suddenly burst out. A terrifying and harsh wind sounded, and the water droplets that enveloped them were scattered. After seeing this scene, Hody and the members of the new Fishman Pirates raised a dignified expression in everyone's expressions. The person in front of him is definitely a master, and if he returns to cook, there may be a lot of trouble, Hody thought in his heart. But Hody was not worried. He dared to attack. He also expected all this. Then he touched the red pill in his pocket, and a smile appeared on his mouth again. His reliance was not so simple. Yuzhixi stayed after smashing the water droplets and shot them, and did not continue to shoot. The surrounding Long Palace guards, under the water droplets, suffered many casualties. But to Shilyu of the Rain and the others, the lives of these people have nothing to do with them. On the contrary, after seeing this scene, Neptune shouted angrily, "How dare you hurt our army's elites? Stop quickly, you jerk." When Neptune was talking about this, his huge body suddenly slammed forward, blocking this large piece of water droplets. The surviving palace ministers and guards who were kept behind by Neptune were deeply moved. "His Majesty Neptune, please step aside." "No, you are all my servants." Hody, who was standing at the entrance of the castle, saw this scene and laughed. "What a fool, what king would resist the attack for his subordinates, and you are not fit to be a king at all." While Hody was talking, he kept throwing out a lot of water traces in his hands, and large swaths of water droplets condensed into water ribs in the air, hitting Neptune. After hearing Hody's words, Neptune raised his head sharply. Mermaid Jiu-Jitsu Water Strike. Neptune's hand suddenly grabbed the water droplets flying in the air, and after condensing it into a ball in his hand, he slammed it in the direction of Hody. Seeing Neptune's shot, Hody also sneered and fought back in the same way. Bang! The two forces made a big collision in the air, and a powerful impact burst out immediately in the collision. Such a weak emperor, who has controlled Fishman Island for so many years, you should abdicate long ago. Hody said, looking at Neptune. Good king, good. Just when Hody wanted to take another shot, a rustling voice suddenly came from the entrance of Long Palace City. Everyone looked behind them and saw a large dolphin carrying a beautiful mermaid. On top of the mermaid was a handsome young man. Neptune's hair stood on end when he saw this scene. Your Majesty Elva, you too, you actually. Neptune looked at Tang Zheng lying on Bai Xing's body and said what happened. Tang Zheng ignored him, but looked at the three princes who were tied up in front of the castle, and said, how is the request I made to you? Chapter 266 The Frog at the Bottom. Chapter 266 The Frog at the Bottom. Chapter 266 And the Frog at the Bottom. Father Wang, Brother Wang. After seeing the situation of Neptune and Nine Xing, Bai Xing immediately shouted loudly. As soon as he finished speaking, he planned to jump off Megalo's back and run towards them. When the three brothers of 9 stars saw this, they immediately opened their mouths and said, be careful of Bai Xing. Don't come here. King Neptune also looked at Tang Zheng and said, His Royal Highness, Elva, get out of here quickly, don't risk yourself. Neptune knew that if the Tianlong people had an accident on Fishman Island, the entire Fishman Island would definitely suffer extinction. Although he had seen the power Tang Zheng displayed during the war on the top, but now this is the bottom of the sea. Under the same strength, there is no race in the sea that will be the opponent of the Murlocs. Huo Di also turned his head and looked at Tang Zheng. He was a little surprised and said, Are you all right? It's too bad that Vanderdecken hasn't caught up with you yet. After hearing Hody's words, the 9-star trio immediately said to Tang Zheng, His Royal Highness, please also quickly bring White Star back to the Shell Tower. Otherwise, it will be troublesome when Dakin appears. Tang Zheng hasn't spoken yet. 197. White Star's words come out. Bai Xing shook his head and said, Lord Dakin, he has been defeated by Lord Elva. Except for Old Bud and others, everyone else showed a shocked look. The demon that haunted them for nearly 10 years was defeated like this. Is this celestial being so powerful? Even Hadi's face had a hint of consternation. I can't believe that guy is so unreliable. Lord Elva, would you please help to solve the difficulties of Long Gongcheng? Princess Baxing looked at Tang Zheng expectantly and said. Tang Zheng smiled, and instead of answering, he looked at Nipton and asked, ask again, my suggestion. Will you agree? Nipton looked at Tang Zheng quietly, without saying a word. The three of Star A all looked dignified. Seeing them like this, Bai Xing was in a hurry. The father, Lord Elva, is very powerful, and he took care of me all the way. If his demands are not too much, you will agree to him, okay? Neptune. On the question, his request is really excessive. But Neptune didn't dare to say at this time that the destruction of Long Palace City was almost always the choice of the Tianlong people. All right, I promise you, I hope your highness can treat Bai Xing kindly. Nipton looked at Tang Zheng, and after a while he spoke. Bai Xing, who was sitting on Megalo's back, immediately became happy after hearing this. Lord Elva, Bai Xing put his hand on Tang Zheng's body and gently held him up. Hey, what conditions are you talking about in front of me? When I don't exist, are you? Hodi turned his eyes to Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng stood on Bai Xing's hand and said lightly, you were right. The smile on Hodi's face immediately subsided, and a drop of water condensed in his hand. Your Highness, do you want us to take action? Old Bud also stood up from his chair at this time and told Tang Zheng what happened. Tang Zheng immediately communicated with the system and scanned Hodi's information. Name, Howdy. Physical skill level, B. V gas level. Armed color, E seeing color, ER king color, none. Degree of fruit development, none. Combat effectiveness evaluation. After seeing this, Tang Zheng also had a bottom line in his heart. Although Huodi had a 6-star combat power, his shaking chi cultivation was extremely low, and it all depended on the strength of the murlocs. But this is still under the condition that the medicine has not been given. After he has given the medicine, it will be difficult to say. Tang Zheng ignored Old Bud and jumped down from Bai Xing's hand. The whole person used the ability of the moon step to walk in the air. Huodi looked at Tang Zheng's actions, and his eyes gradually became cold. CDEC. Huodi, right. Well, these people I brought, you can pick them up one by one. If you can survive, I will take you to marry Joa as an exception, so that you can see the prosperity of time. Tang Zheng laughing at him. After Huodi heard this, a trace of anger suddenly appeared in his eyes. This day, the Long people's thought was, did he mean that he was a frog at the bottom? Then the water droplets that had condensed in his hand immediately shot at Tang Zheng. Seeing this, Tang Zheng didn't dodge or hide. After the water droplet approached, he gently raised his foot and kicked the water droplet. That movement was extremely casual, like kicking a stone on the side of the road. Bang! The water droplets with terrifying power were instantly kicked away under Tang Zheng's feet, and with this powerful impact, they dispersed towards the surroundings. Tang Zheng's attack this time shocked Neptune and the others. Is there such a powerful person among the Tianlong people? It turns out that there are still 2 strokes. No wonder that Guy Dakin will be defeated by you, but do you think you can defeat me like this? At the same time as Hodi said this, he instantly took out a red pill from his body. Under everyone's eyes, it was thrown into the mouth. This is. After seeing Hodi's action, Neptune seemed to remember something, and a bad premonition rose in his heart. After Hodi's medicine was in the population, the whole person immediately noticed a drastic change. In his body, a heavy heartbeat suddenly sounded, covering up all the sounds in the castle. Immediately afterwards, Hodi's hands and stomach suddenly became much thicker, and the clothes that put him on him were also torn. What's even more shocking is that after taking the pill, Hody Jones' eyes suddenly turned red, and the whole person seemed to be a different person. There was a strong aura about him. Hee. After the corpse felt the change in his body, Hody Jones also sneered. Tang Jung looked at this scene indifferently, but did not stop it. After his evolution was completed, he said lightly, "It's done, right?" Hody Jones looked at Tang Jung and said, "Tianlong people, your appearance has given me a chance. My new Murloc pirates will pull you humans down to the dark abyss, and the whole world will be ruled by the Murlocs." Isn't it? Shiliu of the Rain, Tang Jung said lightly. After listening to Tang Jung's words, Shiliu of the Rain stood up from his seat with a big cigar in his mouth, and walked towards Hody step by step. Lae works. Chapter 267 The Mutated Hody. Chapter 267 The Mutated Hody. Chapter 267 The Mutated Hody. After Shiliu of the Rain stood up, there seemed to be a murderous aura in the entire castle. Makes people feel a little palpitated. Tang Jung was still standing in the air, looking at Hody, who was standing on the ground with a hint of mockery in his eyes. A person who relies on taking medicine to become stronger, but also delusionally dominate the world, is really a frog at the bottom. With Shiliu of the Rain's movements, almost everyone's eyes were drawn to him, and the fish people standing behind Hody had a trace of sweat on their faces. Shiliu of the Rain was holding the big cigar in his mouth and holding a red long sword in his hand. Before the sword was unsheathed, a rolling exhaustion was already radiating. Hody Jones looked at Shiliu of the Rain with red eyes, a silent sneer hung on his lips, and his strong hands were tightly clasped. Shiliu of the Rain walked not far from Hody, stopped, and slowly raised the sword in his hands. When Hody saw this, he gave a cold smile, and then kicked his feet, and his figure disappeared from the place in an instant. The whole person rushed towards Shiliu of the Rain from an extremely strange angle, and the speed was extremely fast. Shiliu of the Rain still maintained the movement just now. After sucking the cigar in his mouth, his eyes flashed. Before everyone could see what happened, a strong red light suddenly flashed on Hody's body. Immediately afterwards, the sound of a body being pierced came out. Job. Hody Jones, who was flying close to the speed of sound in the air, froze suddenly. Immediately, he let out a scream of pain. A blood mist burst out from his body. The strong figure also fell to the ground at this moment, smashing the floor of the castle. And the figure of Shiliu of the Rain appeared behind Hody at some point, and the red long sword in his hand was only half drawn. Boss Hody. After seeing this scene, the members of the new Murloc pirates shouted at Hody in horror. At this time, Hody, who was lying on the floor, had a very deep bloodstain on his body, and even his internal organs were faintly visible. When Bai Xing saw the injury on Hody's body, he was so frightened that he covered Zuiba with his hands, and his eyes flashed with shock. The people brought by Hody immediately helped him up, and looked at Shiliu of the Rain, all of them with shock. In their hearts, the boss of Hody is invincible, and now he has been defeated by one move. Let them all have the feeling that their beliefs have collapsed, and they can't accept this fact for a while. It hurts to death, give me that. I want more, Hody said to his men. After hearing Hody's words, a Murloc immediately brought a basin full of red pills. After Hody saw it, he immediately grabbed a handful of pills in Shen's hand towards the basin, and was directly embarrassed. After watching his actions, the fish people standing beside him were all stunned. Boss Hody, taking too much. A Murloc was shocked. Hody ignored them. After swallowing a handful of murderous medicine, Hody's two hands dropped, and then he let out a burst of painful Shen groan. Shiliu of the Rain was still holding a big cigar, and he didn't say much about Hody's actions, but just watched quietly. In front of their eyes, the ants are still ants. Even if they take more medicine, they are at most a stronger ants. Captain Hody. Looking at Hody's painful appearance, the Murlocs standing behind him began to worry. Neptune, who was under the throne, also had a hint of shock in his eyes. On the one hand, he was shocked by the strength of Tang Zheng's subordinates, and on the other hand, it was the medicine that Hody took. That medicine. Is it a banned drug that was locked in a big box? It was stolen many years ago, but I didn't expect it to be you. Nickton said in a deep voice. After taking the fierce medicine, Hody began to kneel on the ground, clutching the hair on his head tightly, and the red light in his eyes became stronger. Boss Hody. Hody, who was kneeling on the ground, gasped for breath. Breathing, become, so difficult. The body, seems to be splitting. The surrounding Murlocs watched this scene, and cold sweat broke out on their heads, and they became a little overwhelmed. Second, ask for flowers. Is this the side effect of that medicine? A Murloc said. Another Murloc also said, it is indeed a dangerous drug. However, at this moment, a large red light suddenly exploded on Hody's body. An even stronger heartbeat spread throughout the castle, and under the horrified eyes of everyone, Hody once again performed a mutation. On his body, the meridians and muscles kept bulging, and with every heartbeat, the body seemed to be strengthened again. In just an instant, the clothes on Hody's body were blown apart, shaking out a terrifying body. The body that was cut by Shiliu of the Rain began to slowly heal due to the mutation of the body, leaving a deep scar. Hody's hand tightly covered the scar and let out a heart-pounding roar. After the roar was issued, in a blink of an eye, the black hair on his head had all turned white. After the last heartbeat stopped, everyone in the castle looked at Hody in shock. After the mutation was completed, Hody had a smile on his face again, and his figure slowly stood up from the ground. He used to be strong, but now he has grown to be incomparably tall. Hello, Captain Hody, are you okay? The Murloc behind Hody, watching Hody stand up from the ground, asked worriedly. There was a strong red glow in Hody's eyes, and he suddenly took a few steps forward and slapped the castle wall. The entire castle vibrated in an instant, and large cracks appeared, and a large hole was broken in the wall shot by Hody. Losing the protection of the castle, large swaths of seawater began to flow in. Hody looked at Tang Zheng and others, and said, no matter where you are sacred, but if you are in the water, no one can be my opponent. Chapter 268 Kill them all. Chapter 268 Kill them all. Chapter 268 Kill them all. After Hody's words fell, a large amount of seawater flowed on the broken walls of the Long Palace, and it spread throughout the castle in a blink of an eye. And the water level is still rising. The Empress and Valdo have solemn expressions on their faces after seeing this scene. After all, both of them are fruit-capable. If it comes into contact with seawater, it will immediately lose all power. Even strong human beings who haven't eaten devil fruits will be hindered to a certain extent in the water. This is a natural defect of human beings and cannot be changed by strength. At this time, the water level in the castle has risen to nearly 10 centimeters. The mutated Hody laughed immediately after looking at his masterpiece. Momo.507. R5010 Hidai. __. Just when Hody got a dull voice sounded, and before he could react, a huge chair suddenly smashed towards him. Boom. Using the ability of Momo's fruit, Valdo not only increased the size of the chair by 5010, but also increased the speed by 5010. Which is not something that Hody can resist. After being hit by the chair, Hody was blasted out of the castle even with the chair, and the whole person hit the wall outside the castle, leaving a huge crack in the wall. Tang Zheng also jumped down from the air and picked up the Empress standing on the table. With another movement, he returned to Megalo's back. No matter what, the Empress is her woman, and naturally she will not be penetrated by the sea in front of so many people. In front of so many people, after being directly picked up by Tang Zheng, a blush appeared on the Empress' face, looking extremely attractive. After returning to Megalo's back, Tang Zheng glanced at Hody, who stood up again, and said to the old bud and the others, let's get rid of him quickly. Let him see the power of human beings. Old bud nodded, glanced at Neptune, and said, Your Majesty Neptune, Please ask your guards to quickly bet on the gap. After finishing speaking, Old Bud hurriedly walked towards Hody. As Old Bard spoke, the surrounding Long Palace guards immediately found various large items, trying to slow down the water level rise. After Hody stood up from the ground, he walked towards the castle again, looking at Valdo with a ruthless look in his eyes. What you used is the so-called demon power, but soon this place will be submerged by the sea water. Let's see how you will be my opponent for a while. Hody smiled coldly. At this time, Old Bud and Shiliu of the Rain also came out. The two looked at Hody and said, "You can't wait for that time." While Old Bud was talking, his figure flashed instantly, his clothes burst inch by inch, and his whole body flashed with the luster of armed blessing. In just a blink of an eye, Old Bud appeared in the sky above Hody, and the black fist with terrifying power hit Hody. In the face of this attack, Hody suddenly gritted his teeth. A pair of fists clenched tightly, a large blue vein burst out on his hand, and greeted Old Bud's palm. Bang! At the junction of the palms of the two, there was a strong collision sound, and a whirlpool of air waves suddenly appeared from Hody's feet. However, Hody's palm could only be held back for a moment, and then under the horrified eyes of the people around, Hody's fists were directly smashed. The two fists, like two heads, suddenly burst open and knelt out of the bones. After blowing Hody's fist, Old Bud's attack did not stop and continued to move towards Hody. Bang! Under the eyes of everyone in the new Fishman Pirates, Old Bud's fist fell directly on the head of their boss, Hody. After being hit by Old Bud, Hody's head sank in half in an instant. A deep fist mark appeared on his mutated head. After doing all this, Old Bud withdrew his fist, looked in the direction where Tang Jung was, and said, "Under 19, it's done." Everyone looked at this scene in shock. Hody, who could shake the entire castle with one hand, was in the hands of this old man, and he didn't fight back. Hody stood on the spot with his hands hanging from his abdomen, and a lot of blood flowed from his entire head. "Captain Hody!" The members of the new Fishman Pirates exclaimed when they saw Hody's likeness, and hurried to Hody's side. Surrounded by his subordinates, Hody, who had lost his focus at first, also slowly came back to his senses. "Give me, I want more," Hody said in a painful voice. Captain Hody can't eat any more. Beside him, a Murloc looked at him and said he was sorry. Tang Jung, who was standing on Megalo's back, looked at this scene, and said lightly, "What? Can't continue. Don't you want to rule the whole world? How can you fall here?" Listening to Tang Jung's words, all the members of the new Fishman Pirates looked at him in shock and anger, but they had no relationship. "Give it to me." Hody was spitting out blood clots while he was talking. With his head already collapsed in half, he can still speak alive, which is also due to the powerful physique of the Murloc. Beside Hody, someone immediately took the pot of the potion, and when Hody saw it, he immediately grabbed it towards the pot. Bang! Just as Hody shot, a 1.2 sound of a clipping gun suddenly sounded. A thumb-sized blood hole appeared on Hody's shoulder. "These medicines, no matter how much you take, it will be a waste. From now on, they belong to me, kill them all." Tang Jung opened his mouth. After hearing this, Hody roared unwillingly and continued to grab the murderous medicine. At this moment, a red light flashed, and Hody's hands were instantly cut off by Yu Jixi. And the fish people standing beside him were all dismembered along with the red light. After losing their strength, the pot of fierce medicine immediately fell towards the ground. Shiliu the Rain picked it up immediately. His Highness said yes, you better put it down obediently. Shiliu of the Rain said with a big cigar in his mouth. Chapter 269 Hody's Defeat. Chapter 269 Hody's Defeat. Chapter 269 Hody's Defeat. At the same time as the turmoil in Long Palace City, various important areas of Fishman Island have also become chaotic, and battles have broken out everywhere. The cadres of the new Fishman Pirates led a large group of subordinates to attack and occupy these areas. It's just that they don't know that in the most important battle of Long Miyagi, their boss, Hody, has already failed __. At this time, in the first-class lot of Fishman Island, Jubari Hills. Due to the chaos of war, there is chaos everywhere. The pirates of the new Fishman pirates are killing people everywhere, and many buildings have collapsed. Wherever the cadres appeared, it caused great confusion. In order to avoid the war, large-scale residents fled everywhere, and almost all those who dared to resist were killed by those cadres. Dangerous, run away. As for the guards, why no one came to rescue us? The residents of the town all fled to other places, but the exit was blocked by the cadres. Where do you want to run? Everyone lined up for me. Don't think about any guards to save you. Neptune is now 23 and can't protect himself. If you don't want to be killed again, just follow our orders honestly. These pirates spit and drink loudly at the crowd. After listening to the words of these Murloc pirates, the ordinary residents here did not dare to make a sound. They could only line up obediently according to their words. When the members of the new Murloc pirates saw it, they all nodded with kindness, and then a Murloc held a wooden board with a portrait nailed on it and threw it in front of everyone. This is. After seeing the portrait on the wooden board, people were suddenly surprised, but more confused. What are you going to do with us? Standing at the front of the crowd, a Murloc in a hat, looked at the Murloc pirates in front of him and said. One by one, pay attention. In the pirate group, a large pirate said in an unquestionable tone. What? The Murloc in the hat thought he had heard it wrong, and there was a hint of surprise on his face. This is a test for you, you just need to do it obediently. The pirate's fierce look makes sense. This __. What a joke, we will never do this. After hearing the words of the pirates, the Murloc in the hat had a righteous and cool look on his face. At this time, all the residents saw the portrait on the wooden board. That was the person they most respected, Princess Otahime. Although Princess Otahime has been dead for many years now, her ideals during her lifetime and her contribution to Fishman Island have been deeply affected. The people of Fishman Island have always been in their hearts. A bunch of disgraceful things, shut up. This country will belong to Captain Hody sooner or later, and Captain Hody will definitely lead everyone to get back the pride of the Murlocs. The King Squid who has never spoken, let's talk about it at this time. This Udon wears a racer's helmet, has a long beard, and holds 8 red Sakura guns. This Murloc is Chibu of the new Murloc pirates, Icarus Musi. Stop talking nonsense, hurry up and pay attention. Icarus Musi looked at the crowd opposite and said that he had suffered. Impossible. 2, we won't do this. 2 corpses wearing a hat. Although the face of the Murloc is frightened, he still insists on the idea in his heart. That was the person he respected the most, and she brought a new spirit to Fishman Island. If he really did this, it would be disrespectful to Princess Otoji who is under Juquan, and it is impossible for him to forgive himself in this life. Is it? Icarus Musi smiled coldly, and his figure followed a few steps forward. Without further ado, holding a red Sakura spear in his hand, he directly stabbed the Murloc with a hat tilde. Stab. After being stabbed in the body by the red Sakura spear, the Murloc with a hat, under the horrified eyes of others, lost the water in his body at a speed visible to the naked eye. In an instant, it became 1,000 corpses. Seeing this sudden scene, the residents standing next to the hat-wearing Murloc were all shocked. Some other timid female mermaids just screamed. Icarus Muxi glanced at the crowd and said with a smile, "Muhehehehe. Make a decision quickly, if you don't want to give up, then I can kill you all." Listening to his words, everyone present looked at him in shock. They didn't want to read the deceased Princess Otahime, but they didn't want to lose her. Go to life. Looking at the crowd's reaction, Icarus Musi continued, "The new kingdom will be born soon, we don't need people who dare to go against our thoughts. So, I advise you to submit obediently to Emperor Hody, because we are about to rule mankind and change history, muhehehe." Icarus Musi looked at these people with a mocking expression, and when he spoke, he began to laugh. The same scene is also being staged in the town where the dim sum processing factory of Fishman Island is located, in the southeast area, in front of the Yumen Cultural Center, 380 feet U in Marin Shopping Center in the east, and in the northern Waterwheel town. The cadres of the new Fishman pirates are facing the weak and weak people, and every one of them feels that they are winning. And in Long Palace City, their Captain Hodi's hands have been cut off, plus the fatal injury to his head. At this time, he is on the verge of death. Captain Hodi. The fish people who followed Hodi to attack Long Palace City were all horrified. Huo Di's boss is their biggest support. Now that he is dead here, even if the other 1,000 units succeed, there is no slack, right? After all, the few existences here are too powerful. After Shiliu of Rain grabbed the pot of ominous medicine in his hand, he looked at Tang Zheng and asked, "Your Highness, the things are already in hand, what about the rest?" Tang Zheng glanced at the murlocs below, and said lightly, "Kill it." After hearing this, the group of pirates suddenly panicked, and they all moved towards their partners. Shiliu of the Rain took a big cigar and said with a smile, "Understood." Chapter 270 Conditions, 4th more. Chapter 270 Conditions, 4th more. Chapter 270 Conditions, 4th more. With Shiliu of the Rain's opening, just in the blink of an eye, the entire castle is like a purgatory. The people of the new Fishman pirates simply can't block the killing, slaughter of Shiliu the Rain. He has always been addicted to killing. This situation can be said to be the most suitable for him. Everyone in the castle looked at all this in shock, and they all wondered, what kind of people this young man brought here. After Shiliu of the Rain killed the following Fishman pirate, he slowly retracted his long sword. The long sword, which originally emitted a strong red light, became even more bewitching after drinking a lot of murloc blood. "Your Highness, the mission is complete." After Shiliu of the Rain took back his long sword, he said to Tang Zheng with a big cigar in his mouth. Tang Zheng nodded, hugged the Empress and jumped off Megalo's back. Bai Xing immediately ran to Neptune's side and helped him up. "Father, are you all right?" Bai Xing looked at Neptune worriedly. Following Bai Xing's movements, the surrounding palace ministers and guards also surrounded him, all looking at him worriedly. Neptune glanced at the guards and ministers who were all wounded, then shook his head and said, "I'm fine, everyone go and thank His Highness Elva for his help." "Lord Elhua, thank you." Princess Shi Baixing put her hand in front of Shang, and looked at Tang Zheng with a hint of softness in her eyes. After seeing Bai Xing speak, the surrounding ministers also bowed to Tang Zheng, and said in unison, "Thank you, His Highness Elva, for your help." Tang Zheng nodded and walked towards the castle with the Empress. At this time, the big hole made by Hodi had also been blocked by the guards, and the water level began to slowly drop. After Tang Zheng walked into the castle, he said, "Hodi has been planning for so long. Don't you all know what happened, but I think you are a bit of a failure as a king." Neptune, tilde. IG Star Prince. The management of the Fishman Street has always been in place, and the characters of the fishmen there are a bit distorted. They not only hate humans, but even their companions are ruthless, so this happens. Love. The Prince of Rollover Star also opened his mouth and said, "It seems that the murderous medicine that Hadi ate was also the kind that was stolen from the palace a few years ago, and it was almost the same time when Hadi resigned as a guard." Tang Zheng said calmly, "Those in power are not strong enough, that's what happened. If they were killed directly before they grew up, how could there be so many things?" Neptune, ___. At this moment, Hodi fell to the ground with a breath left, and suddenly shouted loudly. Immediately afterwards, the whole person was aging at a speed visible to the naked eye, but in the blink of an eye, he turned into a gray-haired, skinny old man. "Humans, are going to die," Hodi said in an old voice. Boom. Tang Zheng picked out the Emperor Ming without hesitation and shot him in the head. After the slaughter of Shiliu of the Rain, the castle at this time was full of broken limbs, which looked extremely terrifying. Nipton walked over, looked at Tang Zheng and said, His Royal Highness, the environment here is too bad, please follow me to the palace, let us thank you for your help this time. Father, Hody is in control of Fishman Street, and this time he is definitely not alone. It's just that we haven't heard from other places until now. It seems that they have made sufficient preparations. 9-star Prince. Open 0. Neptune nodded and said, Hurry up and try to contact the city guards and let them see how other areas are doing. Prince Feast Star complied immediately, took out the phone bug on his body and contacted him, but no matter how much he called, he couldn't get a response. Tang Zheng said indifferently, Forget it, Huodi's presence here proves that your so-called city guards have been killed. The feasting prince said in shock, and immediately said to Neptune, Father, then we have to go to other areas as soon as possible to stop the bigger disaster. Neptune nodded and said in a deep voice, Then hurry up and prepare. The three Yangxing brothers turned around and were about to leave when a voice stopped them. Don't be stupid, it's so much trouble to find one by one. Besides, you may not be able to fight the officers of the new Murloc pirates. Tang Zheng said lightly. The Feast Star immediately asked, Go down, Elva Saint Yin, I don't know what you can do. You just announce it and say that Hody has been picked by you, and let these Murlocs gather in Dojol Cordo Square, and I will help you solve it. But you also need to pay a certain price. Tang Zheng laughed. After listening to his words, Xingxing and the others frowned, but at the moment they have no other way than the people from Yishantian. Lord Elva Sandring is right, we have already troubled him, and we should pay a little reward. Princess White Star also made sense. Neptune, __. A star, ~2. After a few people glanced at each other, Neptune asked, I don't know what you need from us, His Majesty Elva. Mermaid, I want 1,000 young and beautiful mermaids. Tang Zheng spoke lightly. 1,000. Neptune's eyes snapped. Young and beautiful, the stars also looked at Tang Zheng in astonishment. Although I have long heard that this young man is very fond of women. But it doesn't require 1,000, right? Can you bear it? Bai Xing blinked his beautiful big eyes to Nuo's as if he was a little confused about Tang Zheng's conditions. Rover Star looked at Tang Zheng, hesitated for a moment, and said, His Royal Highness, female mermaids will not grow legs until they are 30 years old. If you bring them back, you can't do anything. And 1,000 is a bit too much, we can't force them to give to you. The Star Princes also said in embarrassment. I have my own way to evolve the problem of legs. Besides, compared to the country's annihilation, I believe that many mermaids will choose to follow me, right? Tang Zheng said indifferently. This star is still a little embarrassed. 1,000 beautiful mermaids. If they are sent out, Fishman Island will have at least decades of beauty faults, right? Tang Zheng took the Empress to the side and sat down, and continued, Choose as soon as possible, I don't have so much time to wait. Chapter 271 Execution of Hody the 5th. Chapter 271 Execution of Hody the 5th. Chapter 271 Execution of Hody the 5th. The Empress sat beside Tang Zheng and listened to the conditions he made to Neptune. A complex look flashed in his eyes. Her Majesty Elva, can your conditions be reduced a little? The 9-star prince asked. Tang Zheng shook his head and said, Impossible, you can announce to the entire Fishman Island after the event, and ask the volunteers to leave with me. Neptune and the others looked at Tang Zheng silently, swaying for a while. Don't worry, I didn't let them be my slaves when I took them away. On the contrary, after following me, they will definitely be better than in Fishman Island. And I will pay them a lot of Bailey. Tang Zheng said lightly. After hearing this, these stars seemed to think of something, and immediately asked, Your Highness, forgive me, do you want so many mermaids to play with Kensni? These star princes have also paid attention to the opening of Kensni, so they are very aware of this. Tang Zheng nodded. Mermaid is a rare species on land. If you bring them back to Mary Joa, it will definitely cause a big sensation. At that time, because of the appearance of the mermaid, more nobles will come to play with Kensni, and under the protection of Tang Jung, no one dares to do anything with the girl. Although these accompanying women are not Tang Jung's personal belongings, Tang Jung will not stand by and watch the bullies being bullied. 780. Enxing saw Tang Jung nod his head, he was also relieved. If it is really to play with, it is estimated that there will be a large number of mermaid women willing to leave with this highness. We agreed to this condition, but I hope that if these mermaids want to return to Fishman Island, please don't embarrass them. These princes looked at Tang Jung and said what happened. Tang Jung said lightly, first of all, you have to find out. Now I am making a request to you. Ao Sheng. Please don't be angry, I made a blunder. We agreed to the conditions, and asked His Royal Highness to help solve this turmoil. The 9-star said helplessly. Tang Jung nodded and walked out of the castle with a group of people. What are you still doing? Announce the execution of Hody in Junkerdo Square and let them throw themselves into the bar. Looking at the backs of Tang Jung and the others, the 9-star prince no longer lingered. Immediately, a video call was prepared for the whole island. After a while, the image was ready, and the figure of Feast Star soon appeared on all screens on Fishman Island. All the people of the Fishman Island of Sea, can you hear my voice? I am the eldest prince of the Long Palace Kingdom, Turtle Star. Blanket Star said into the microphone. After the voice of 9-star came out, both the fleeing Murlocs and the pirates of the new Murloc pirates stopped their movements one by one. Looking at the 9-star prince on the screen. Regarding today's raid, first of all I would like to say sorry to everyone. The city guards of Long Palace did not protect everyone's safety, which caused everyone to suffer a disaster. A look of sadness appeared on Prince Blanket Star's face. Of color. However, after the help of His Majesty Elva, the mastermind of this matter, Hody Jones, has now been arrested by us. Quan Xing's words immediately surprised everyone. So, here's what I'm going to announce, we're holding Insurgent Hody Jones right now. Go to Junkerdo Plaza, where the execution will take place in 2 hours. 9 stars announced. N-Star's remarks immediately exploded on the island. For ordinary people, they almost applauded. It turns out that this guy Hody is the mastermind. This guy has been calling the Fisherman Street, and he has long known that he is not a good thing. A member of the public said Chu. Damn it, these people made a stomp on the image of Princess Odahime. Execute quickly, so that the Fishman Island can be restored to peace. In areas where there was no war, the people at this time all looked at the screen and said what happened. Different from the public's reaction, the officers of the new Fishman pirates were all shocked after seeing the announcement of 9 stars. But most of them are still dubious, because in the eyes of these cadres, their Captain Hody is the most powerful. How could they be caught so easily? Almost all the officers of the new Murloc pirates. They all hold such thoughts. Do you think the words of these stars are credible? Icarus Musi said to the phone bug in his hand. After seeing the announcement of 9 stars, these cadres contacted each other for the first time. Others don't know Captain Hao Ti, so don't we understand. What, more, the boss of Hody came with so many poisonous medicines. Bodhidharma continued. But, what if this is true? Maybe they had expected our actions long ago and set up a trap to wait for Captain Hody to take the bait. Icarus Musi said solemnly. I also feel that things are a little wrong. According to the time, it should be Captain Hody who appears on the big screen now, not 9 stars. One of the cadres, Leopard Zhang said. Cadre Jiao, who has not spoken for a while, said, is it true? We all have to go there. There should be quite a few civilians on your side. Take them all and take them as hostages. If Captain Hao Ti is really caught, use this to force them, save Captain Hody, and fight them again. Okay, let's do it like this. After listening to Jay's words, the cadres took action one by one. After IG Star announced the words, a lot of people have gathered in Junkerdo Plaza at this time. Some people who want to watch the show are standing far away, for fear that they will be targeted by the new Murloc pirates. On the other hand, the pirates of the New Fishman pirate group. There are also many people waiting in the square at this time, and beside them, they are all holding a famous hostage. The purpose of these people is the same, waiting for the arrival of 9-Star and others with Hody. If Hody is really caught, then use this group of hostages to rescue him. The regions where the officers of the New Fishman pirates are located are different. Therefore, it is impossible for them to appear together. At this moment, a double bun 9 Murloc with a large group of Murloc pirates left the square. Behind this group of sea mobs, there is a group of civilians remanded in custody. The members of the New Fishman pirate group almost tried their best to take hostages and use such means to force Neptune to submit. Here comes Dothan. In the Murloc seam in the square, after seeing the appearance of the double bun 9 Murlocs, they immediately cheered. The cadre finally appeared, this time must make Neptune regret the decision. Chapter 272 and a Scientist. Chapter 272 and a Scientist. Chapter 272 and a Scientist. After Tang Zheng left Long Palace with Old Bud and others, he soon heard some news that the Prince of Stars would go on. At this time, Tang Zheng was holding the box of fierce medicine in his hand, and there was a hint of curiosity in his eyes. After seeing his movements, Old Bud immediately opened his mouth and said, "Your Highness, are you interested in this thing? Strength still depends on your own cultivation. Although this drug can make people burst into a powerful force star in an instant, the after effects are really terrifying." Old Bud didn't want to just watch and do such a stupid thing, especially after seeing Hody turn into an old man in an instant. "Don't think about it, what do I need this medicine for? But with this kind of thing, I can train a group of dead men." Tang Zheng's eyes flashed and he said lightly. After hearing this, Old Bud felt relieved, as long as His Highness didn't eat it by himself. As for what His Highness likes to do, no matter right or wrong, Old Bud has always been supportive. This medicine is truly magical. A weak human being who eats it will have the capital to challenge the strong. Shiliu of the Rain said with a big cigar in his mouth. Tang Zheng nodded. Although this kind of poisonous medicine has great sequelae, but if used well, it is definitely a force that cannot be ignored. It seems that someone needs to find someone to study the ingredients of these medicines, if they can be mass-produced. Tang Zheng's mouth showed a faint smile. "You can ask Vegapunk to help you see it," Old Bud said. "Vegapunk? Is that a scientist of the world government, a great human who claims to be 500 years ahead of today's technology?" Tang Zheng asked. Old Bud nodded and said, "Go back to the Rouge, yes." Tang Zheng shook his head and said, "If it's him, forget it. The murderous medicine is handed over to him, and it is estimated that it will be notified by all the high-level officials soon. At that time, I will be punished even more." Old Bard, __. In addition to Vegapunk, I have also heard of a person who is still a colleague of Vegapunk, but was expelled by the scientific force because his thoughts were too extreme and he opposed Vegapunk everywhere. Shiliu interface. It's M. Caesar Current, the concubine has also heard about him. Empress Hancock opened his mouth. After listening to their words, Tang Zheng and Wei Wei pondered. According to the memory in his mind, Caesar Current at this time should be under Doflamingo's demon, right? Now it seems that raising a scientist is also a very expensive idea. Will Doflamingo attend the World Conference? Tang Zheng asked. Dressrosa is also one of the allies. As a king, he will naturally appear in Mary Joa. Old Bard said respectfully. That's good. Tang Zheng smiled immediately after hearing this. No one knew what was on his mind. During the chat of a few people, a large number of people had gathered in the Chongerkoduo Square at this time. Following Prince Turtle Star's words, almost all the guards in Fishman Island rushed towards Jonalcordo Square. They all know that this will be a final battle, and they will do their part for this country no matter what. On the edge of the cliff above Jonalcordo Square, there were already full of guards, each holding a musket, staring at the Murloc pirates below the square. Just do it, you scoundrels, how can you do such a thing to this country? On the edge of the cliff, a guard officer looked down and explained. The Murloc pirates below the square ignored the guards above, their thoughts were on the upcoming Captain Hody. Boss Dothan, is what blank star said true? Captain Hody was really caught by them. A fishman pirate looked at the cadres who came to the square and asked. Dotson came to the plaza's stage to speak. We don't know, but the only thing that is certain is that no one can contact Captain Hody right now. Listening to Dothan's words, the Murlocs in the square began to worry. Don't worry, with the strength of Captain Hody, there will be no problem. As long as Captain Hody is rescued, it will be the end of the Neptune army. Dothan said after taking a look at the group of pirates. Kill Neptune. With Dothan's words, all the Murlocs in the square cheered. Just as the pirates cheered, a giant white bear sea beast suddenly appeared in the sky in the distance of Joel Cordo Square. For flowers. On this giant white bear sea beast, headed by one of the cadres is Icarus Musi. The guards standing on the edge of the cliff, when they saw the appearance of the giant white bear, immediately turned around and pointed their muskets at the pirates on the sea beast. The guard officer said, "Stop. Otherwise, we will shoot." Looking at the approaching giant sea beast, the guards on the cliff all broke out in a cold sweat. Shoot! Shoot! Seeing that the sea beast did not stop, the officer on the cliff immediately spoke up. Immediately afterwards, a series of gunshots sounded instantly, and a large number of bullets flew towards the sea beast. But in the face of this huge sea beast, ordinary ammunition has no effect at all. Hit the sea beast like a scratch. The sea beast approached the guards on the cliff in an instant, and slapped them with a palm. Under this palm, the cliff in this piece collapsed immediately, and a large number of guards lost their lives in an instant. In the face of this giant creature, ordinary guards simply cannot resist. Ha ha ha! Looking at this scene, Icarus Muxi, who was standing on the giant white bear, burst into laughter. With the giant white bear opening the way, Icarus Musi and others immediately entered the square and joined with Dothan and others. It's too strong, it can't be resisted at all, the guard officer said in a panic. With the appearance of Icarus Musi, large sea beasts of different stature appeared in the sky above Joel Cordo Square. Seeing this scene behind the scenes, the Hazewans in the square immediately cheered. The cadres have all come to rescue Captain Hody and destroy the Long Palace Kingdom. Under everyone's eyes, a large number of sea beasts gathered towards the square, and a large number of people stood on the backs of each sea beast. Dare to call Banyangsing to our new Murloc pirates. Chapter 273 What is the result? Chapter 273 What is the result? Chapter 273 What is the result? As the pirates cheered loudly in the square, a passage was suddenly bitten out of the cliff wall that no one paid attention to. Huge piles of gravel fell from it, and then a Murloc in tortoise shell jumped out of the passage. Are you all ready? It seems that I am not too late. The turtle man gritted his teeth and made a crisp metallic sound. In the passage behind the turtle-clad Murlocs, there are also a large number of Murloc pirates, pouring out one after another in the passage. The boss of Lanzang is also here. Everyone, please don't show him, he is too dangerous. The pirates in the square looked at an octopus on the sea beast and said what happened. In the eyes of the pirates, the octopus man was holding a large jug in his mouth, and he was swaying when he stood on the sea beast. At this time, after hearing the words of the pirate man, he immediately hit a full 83 drink. As the cadres appeared one after another, the atmosphere in Jonkerdo Square became extremely warm at this time. Almost all the Fishman pirates are eager to try, and they all know that this war will change the history of the Fishman Island. The era of their rule is coming. Under the eyes of everyone in the square, the sea beast where the cadres were also slowly fell into the square. After the sea beast stopped, a group of cadres jumped off the sea beasts at the same time, and they all walked towards the stage in the square. Dothan, one of the cadres, waited here for a long time, and after seeing their arrival, a faint smile appeared on his face. It's so slow, Dothan said to the pirate group leaders in front of him. It took a lot of time to take the hostages. Is there any news from Captain Hody? Jiao looked at Dothan and asked. Dothan shook his head and said, I still can't get in touch with Captain Hody. It seems that they may have been caught. Then wait for them to come, and let the Neptune army see our strength. Jay continued. With the dialogue of the cadres, in this square, the pirates have already laid out a huge lineup, waiting for the arrival of 9 stars and others. In today's Changrekuduo Square, there are already dense crowds, almost all of them are members of the new Murloc pirates. The entire square is occupied by them, and no one dares to approach. And in the center of the square, a large number of hostages were also detained. Some of the hostages wanted to resist and were executed on the spot. There were also many ordinary people who came to watch the play standing on the edge of the cliff. After seeing the pirates below, they were all resentful. Disaster has begun to come. On the edge of a cliff, here sits a mature mermaid with short black hair. She has a very cold and beautiful face, wearing a hooded top, quietly staring at the pirates below. The square said. Mrs. Shali, is this the disaster you saw in the crystal ball before? There are several beautiful mermaids beside Shali. All of them looked at her in astonishment and asked how they were. After listening to Mrs. Shali's words, these mermaid girls all remembered the shock she had when she saw the crystal ball. Charlie didn't seem to hear what they said, still maintaining her previous appearance, quietly looking at the bottom of the square. All this should not have happened so soon. I saw the fault of the world in the crystal ball, and the collapse of the world. That Tianlong man, he changed the direction of the world. This is a horrible job. Ah! After the corpse heard Shali's words, the faces of the mermaids sitting beside her kneeled in shock. Mrs. Charlie's ability to predict is almost 100% accurate, and people in the entire Fishman Island will choose to believe her words. Is this celestial being really that scary? Just as the few mermaids were shocked, a footstep sounded behind them. After hearing this voice, the few mermaids immediately turned their heads, but when they saw the person coming, they all exclaimed. Tianlong people. After seeing Tang Zheng's sudden arrival, the beautiful mermaids beside Shali were all horrified. Arranging other people behind their backs is a very tricky thing, especially if you get caught. Tang Zheng slowly walked towards the edge of the cliff and said lightly. Madame Shali suddenly turned her head and looked at Tang Zheng's figure. Her pupils contracted violently. Tang Zheng walked slowly to Mrs. Shali's side, looking at the large number of sea urchins below. There was a faint smile on his lips. Old Bud, Gerald and the others stood 10 meters away from Tang Zheng, and they vaguely surrounded Sha-A and the others. I have seen M. Shali stood up and saluted Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng nodded and said, You said that I changed the direction of the world, so tell me what the world should have been like. I don't know, foreknowledge can only see the future, not everything. Mrs. Shali looked at Tang Zheng and said what happened. Tang Zheng smiled and said, Can you meet the future with just a crystal ball? Yes. Mrs. Shali was a little confused about Tang Zheng's thoughts, but she still didn't dare to hide it. I'm a little bit thinking. I'm also very interested in divination. Let's make a divination for yourself to predict what will happen to you today, and then I'll come to see if the fate of people is determined by heaven, or if they go by themselves. Tang Zheng said lightly. After hearing Tang Zheng's words, a trace of horror flashed in Mrs. Shali's eyes. She had collected a lot of information about the people in front of her. She knows that no matter what the result of her divination is, this Tianlong person will definitely go in the opposite direction of 5.7. This person seems to be born to fight against fate. What? Don't you be lazy. Tang Zhengwei looked at her with a smile. Charlie shook her head, then took out the crystal ball from her body, closed her eyes and began to sing, with a hint of meaning in her voice. After a while, Mrs. Shali stopped singing and looked at the crystal ball with an uneasy mind. But under this glance, the crystal ball is not like the one in the past, the future scene that will appear, the crystal ball at this time is blank. After seeing this scene, Shali suddenly fell to the ground, and several mermaid ladies immediately supported her. What was the result? Tang Zheng still looked into the square and asked without looking back. My destiny is broken. Chapter 274 What is Destiny? Chapter 274 What is Destiny? Chapter 274 What is Destiny? Mrs. Charlie's words were filled with deep shock, and even when she foresaw Whitebeard's death, she did not show much emotional fluctuations. But since this young man came, the 2 consecutive divinations have shocked her. The mermaid ladies who have been around her all the time, hold her tightly, and are a little confused about what Mrs. Charlie said. Broken, why? Tang Jung said lightly. Mrs. Charlie looked at the back in front of her with deep shock in her eyes, but she still said, because of your highness. Before the divination, she knew that no matter what the outcome was, this Tianlong person would go in the opposite direction. Because of this, her fate became unpredictable. But this is not the main reason. The real reason is that her fate will be rewritten in this encounter, just like the fault in the world. 2. Anyone who has been in contact with this Tianlong person will have their original destiny collapsed. Even if she claims to be 100% accurate, she can only predict a blank color. Tang Jung smiled and said, that means that fate still depends on itself. 24 While saying this, Tang Jung grabbed Charlie's hand and stomach and dragged her to the edge of the cliff. Mrs. Charlie. After seeing Tang Jung's movements, the mermaid beauties standing beside Charlie were all worried. But they didn't dare to stop Tianlong's movements. Grabbing Charlie's hand and stomach, Tang Jung's hand would inevitably touch some high, moist places, causing a red cloud to appear on Charlie's glamorous face. What are you trying to do? Being pulled to the edge of the cliff, Charlie looked at the height of hundreds of meters and was surprised. Tang Jung laughed and said, be optimistic about the crowd below, and there will be things that will rewrite fate. In other words, what do you think fate is? Listening to Tang Jung's words, even old Bard and the others turned their attention to Charlie, wondering how the fortune teller looked at fate. Mrs. Charlie quietly looked at the pirates under the square. After a while, she said with a hint of confusion and firmness in her expression, the unchangeable past and the uncontrollable end are fate. Charlie's words made everyone feel the same. Unexpectedly, Tang Jung smiled, and everyone looked at him strangely. Destiny is a Biaozi, only by watching her, can you go to the service peak. Tang Jung said, and suddenly burst into laughter. Old Bud. Cheer you of the rain. Mrs. Charlie, who was kneeling beside Tang Jung, looked at him in shock. With such arrogant words, aren't you afraid of condemnation? Just as a few people were talking, a huge noise suddenly exploded in the square. Everyone looked in the direction of the sound, and saw that the gate at the entrance of the square was suddenly knocked open by a huge force. Immediately afterwards, some stars with long blue wavy hair, as well as his 2 younger brothers, Huang Xing and Rover Xing, appeared in everyone's sight in a huge phoenix-tailed car together. After seeing the appearance of the 3 princes of Long Palace City, the hostages in the square suddenly burst into cheers. These star princes, they are finally here. Great, we can finally be saved. These people who want to seize the throne, they have all been defeated. That's right, Hody must be killed. The hostages in the center of the square all shouted their grievances, making the already lively square suddenly boil. What are you arguing about? Kill a few first. After seeing the riot of the hostages, the Chinbu people immediately shouted. Following their words, the murlocs of the new murloc pirates immediately swung their butcher knives towards the hostages. Immediately in the square there was a shout of repair. Stop it! Prince Turtle Star just saw this scene, he shouted loudly, and wanted to rush over with the phoenix car. As soon as the 3 princes made a move, the huge sea beasts of the new fishman pirates immediately turned into a tiger-watching appearance, and instantly surrounded them. Seeing this, Sanwei Prince immediately picked up the weapon in his hand, and his expression became solemn. Be careful, it seems that these sea beasts and murlocs have taken the medicine. 19 Xing glanced at the 2 younger brothers beside him and reminded them. They all still have injuries left by Hody, and it is really necessary to play a 12-point battle at this time. Prince Royal Star nodded. If it wasn't for this, the city guards wouldn't have been knocked down so easily. Even so, we have to defeat them. The overturned star on the side followed. Roar! ___. As if responding to their words, the sea beasts who surrounded them all let out a huge roar. After the roar fell, the sea beasts walked towards the three princes step by step. They looked like they were grinning, and they could not wait to pounce on them and shred the three princes to pieces. Seeing this, not only the hostages in the square, but also the faces of the civilians on the edge of the cliff showed worry. This war affects everyone's heart. If the three princes also fail, the Fishman Island will fall into darkness forever. Roar! __roar! The roar of a sea beast continued, but after a while, the three princes approached and opened their bloody mouths. 387. Mermaid Jiu-Jitsu Water Gun. Seeing this, Prince Blanket immediately spun the weapon in his hand. Fight towards the nearest sea beast of puppet. Bang! Under Jian Xing's shot, the original mighty sea beast was instantly killed. 7 treasures. Long Palace Gate. At the same time as the 9-star shot, the other two princes also attacked the sea beasts, and the sea beasts surrounding them were wiped out in a blink of an eye. Seeing the three princes show their might, everyone was stunned. See, the sea beasts have been defeated. The three princes are so powerful. The hostages in the center of the square all shouted with joy. The stronger the princes, the greater their hope of being saved. After knocking down the sea beast, the three princes slowly fell to the ground, looking at the cadres in front of them and saying, "You scoundrels full of strange thoughts. All of you must be executed today." At the same time as the 9-star voice fell, a larger lineup was ushered in at the entrance of the square, headed by Neptune and Baxing, and behind them, followed by a large number of city guards. In the center of the city guards, there was an old man who had lost his breath. After seeing this old man, the thousands of people in the square were shocked. Chapter 275 Is it stupid? Fourth more. Chapter 275 Is it stupid? Fourth more. Chapter 275 Is it stupid? Fourth more. The people held by the city guards quickly fell into the eyes of everyone. Who is that old man? A pirate from the New Murloc Pirates said. Shouldn't it be Captain Hody? Although he is a bit older, he still looks very similar. Another pirate said. After listening to his words, everyone stared at Hody who was being held. Don't deceive people, this old guy will definitely not be Captain Hody, don't be fooled. Jia, one of the cadres, said it well. After the cadre's opening, the pirates who were a little flustered also began to calm down. That's right, how could Captain Hody become like this? Hand over Captain Hody. I think they didn't catch Captain Hody at all. What are we trying to do here? In the new Fishman Pirates, Captain Hody is a kind of spirit. If it really becomes like this, it will definitely cause a certain blow to them. After hearing the words of the pirates, the featuring star, who had been silent all the time, suddenly said angrily, "What is it that you don't understand? You are weaker than anyone on this island." After hearing this, the sound of the whole square stopped, and the pirates and cadres standing in the square immediately stopped the smiles on their faces. IG Star looked at the pirates in front of him. The residents on this island have closed their hearts because of the long history of being abused by humans. But all of this has faded away with the passage of time. Their dreams are the same, and they have endured to this day with the determination to change the future. They all follow the concept of the princess and want to live in peace with human beings. However, this strong and kind determination, why you just don't understand, why do you cause such a big killing? 9 stars looked at the pirates with a look of grief and indignation. 9-star Prince. Your Royal Highness. After hearing these words, whether it was the hostages or the Murlocs on the cliff, there were waves of emotion in their hearts at this time. Everything the princess did when she was alive makes them vividly remember. Kindness. Determination. What's the use of this kind of thing? Do you still want to be deceived by humans? 11. Dothan said disdainfully. Madam Princess, are you talking about the mermaid who was killed by Captain Hody many years ago? Ha 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 ha. Jiao laughed out loud. Following his words, almost all the members of the new Fishman pirates burst into laughter together. But unlike this group of pirates, whether Dad is a hostage or a civilian, or the three princes have a deep shock in their eyes at this time, everyone seems to be petrified. Neptune's two eyebrows were raised upside down, and he stared at Hody, who had lost his breath. Hody, this bastard. And the three princes clenched their fists tightly and looked at the group of cadres with angry flames in their eyes. Ha ha ha, this group of people is really stupid. Everyone is being played around by Captain Hody. She actually dared to stop us from taking revenge on mankind, and even dared to preach about peaceful coexistence with mankind. That woman was too annoying. Captain Hody pushed the murderer onto mankind. How clever. With the death of that woman, the Murloc's hatred of the human beings is a little bit r_d. Your stupid daydreams are over. Hoo-ha-ha. Joe continued to speak loudly. Are you surprised to learn the truth? Are you scared? If you know each other, just be obedient and hand over our captain, Muhehe. Icarus Muxie said with a smile. Hurry up and hand over our captain. Maybe after we rule the Fishman Island, we can open up to you. However, at this moment, Bai Xing, who had been drooping his head, suddenly raised his head, and there was a glittering color in his eyes. I already knew all this. Princess White Star said softly. White Star. Neptune looked at her in shock. The rest of the people's eyes widened after hearing Shiraishi's words. What did you say? Jiao, one of the cadres, had a hint of disbelief in his eyes. This truth has always been known to only a few of them. A few years after the incident happened, Megalo secretly told me that he witnessed it that day. Shirahoshi said it sadly. If that's the case, why don't you tell everyone the truth? After the Prince of IG recovered his senses, he said. I can't say. If I did, someone would definitely resent Hody's second _. Princess White Star painfully. Listening to her words, the people in the whole square were shocked. This will only make the dead mother sad. Everyone looked at her in shock. A little girl was locked in a hard-shell tower, carrying a truth for nearly 10 years. It is conceivable how much pain she suffered in her heart. 2 feet 1. This is what my mother told me. No one can be angry or resentful. Bai Xing's tears kept on leaving. It can only be vented until today. Mew ha ha ha. After hearing what Shirahoshi said, the Chinbu suddenly burst into laughter. What are you laughing at, bastard? The Star Princes looked at Chinbu and said, what happened? Why are you not allowed to laugh? What a real girl. If she told the truth, there would be no result today. She is really stupid. Listen to Bai Xing, your behavior is called stupid. Geo_. Open Q pass. Mew ha ha ha, because of your tolerance. This country has fallen to this point, all because of you. Facing the words of this group of cadres, everyone was silent, their heads lowered, and a fire of anger burned on them. And the three princes, even more tightly grasped the weapons in the hands of Qian Li Jiao, and walked towards the group of cadres. What? Want to attack us? Do you think you've beaten a few sea beasts, and you think you're very powerful? Dothan said with a sneer. Icarus Musi went on to say. We will never lose because we have the power given by God. It is this power that will bring us the real Murloc kingdom. After the words of Icarus Musi fell, the eyes of the Murloc cadres instantly flashed red. Immediately afterwards, their figures disappeared in place and appeared beside the princes. Heart. 9 Star suddenly shouted loudly. Too slow. The figures of the Murloc cadres passed through the three princes in an instant. Under everyone's eyes, a cloud of blood erupted from the bodies of the three princes. Chapter 276 verses 100,000, 5th more. Chapter 276 verses 100,000, 5th more. Chapter 276 verses 100,000, 5th more. The princes who were originally wounded fell to the ground in an instant after being attacked like this. A group of pirates immediately swarmed up and controlled several princes. Everyone looked at this scene in shock, The princes who are known as the top 3 in the Long Palace actually didn't even have the chance to resist in the hands of this group of people. The princes are clearly approaching summer. Why did the situation suddenly reverse? Will this group of people be so strong? A civilian on the cliff said in shock. The incompetent Neptune, haven't you handed over Captain Hody? Is it possible that you don't want the lives of some princes and these untouchables? After knocking down the 9-star people, Jay looked at Neptune and said, Brother Wang. Princess Bai Xing covered Zuiba and looked at Xing Xing and others, but she was anxious. Lord Elva, not yet. Dothan looked at the white star in front of him and said, It is said that this mermaid princess has extraordinary power. Since this is the case, she can't be allowed to grow up and become a threat to us, right? Several cadres glanced at each other, and walked in the direction of Bai Xing together. Bai Xing stared at this scene with wide eyes, a pair of pink fists tightly clenched. Lord Elva. With the exclamation of Bai Xing, on the edge of a cliff, a terrifying slashing light blade suddenly appeared. Light blade came to Shirahoshi in an instant and stopped the movements of several pirate officials to Yin. Boom! The slashing light blade directly cut into the ground of the square, leaving a deep crack there. After seeing this scene, everyone's eyes turned to the cliff where the light blade appeared, and there stood a handsome young man dressed in luxury. Tang Zheng let go of the hand that grabbed Shali, and said lightly, I am optimistic, the fate-changing scene is coming again. After speaking, Tang Zheng took a step forward and walked towards the stage in the square. Mrs. Shali looked at Tang Zheng's back, and there was a hint of deep shock in her eyes. At this time, everyone's eyes converged on Tang Zheng. He actually walked in the air. Whether it's a pirate or a commoner, the eyes that look at Tang Zheng are extremely shocking. Under Tang Zheng's feet, the entire sky is like an infinite staircase, heading towards the square from top to bottom. Every step, a strong wave of air ripples will be induced in the air, like a stone falling in the water, and it will spread around. Old Bud and the others standing behind Tang Zheng, watching Tang Zheng's movements, also felt extremely uneasy in their hearts. The speed of His Royal Highness's 6 forms and a cheese cultivation is really terrifying. Old Bard sighed. His Highness's move, he can't do it. Moving without dead ends in the air and pausing in the air requires extremely proficient in moonwalking, but walking slowly in the air is the first time Old Bud has seen it. Under everyone's gaze, Tang Zheng slowly walked off the stage in the square. The cadres of the new Fishman pirates were only 10 meters away from him, but no one dared to attack him. The shock brought by this hand is absolutely unprecedented. Lord Elva. After Bai Xing saw Tang Zheng's arrival, Pai Liang's big eyes filled with tears, saying that he was suffering. Is this a celestial being? Just now, Princess Bai Xing seemed to be asking him for help. The commoner on the cliff looked at Tang Zheng on the stage and said what happened. Tang Zheng stood on the stage, and after hearing Bai Xing's words, Wei Wei smiled and said, Tell everyone one thing, in fact, Huo Di is already dead. If you don't believe it, you can look there. Tang Zheng pointed his finger at the old man, CEAF, who was being held by the city guards. Everyone's eyes shifted. Stop lying, how could Captain Hody be defeated in the hands of someone like you? After hearing Tang Zheng's words, Jiao immediately said that he had suffered. Are you that celestial being? It's really stupid to choose to appear here at this time. As long as you are resolved, the conflict between humans and Murlocs will definitely escalate again. Tang Zheng smiled lightly. Believe it or not, it's up to you. As long as you all come here, everything will be much simpler. Brave boy, there are nearly 100,000 outlaws in this square. What's the use of you alone? Even if you bring a large number of guards here, you can't be saved now. Dothan said. 100,000. Tang Zheng's lips cornered with a smile, and the whole person suddenly took a step forward. After seeing his actions, the cadres in front of them all looked solemn. Tang Zheng Weiwei raised his eyes, and at this moment, a shocking aura suddenly erupted from his body. S-level versus King, S aura is unreservedly displayed. A terrifying coercion followed. The cadres in front of Tang Jung were the first to take the brunt of it. In the blink of an eye, these cadres all vomited blood and flew out. Under Tang Jung's feet, a large crack appeared at the same time, extending out from the stage, and following this versus Chi attacked in all directions. When the pirates of the new Fishman pirate group came into contact with this aura, they only felt a shock in their bodies, and their bones seemed to be shattered. Hundreds of thousands of pirates all fell down in an instant. But this momentum did not stop there. The cracks on the ground extending away from each other were heading towards the cliff wall. In the blink of an eye, the entire square was like a cobweb had been cast down, with cracks everywhere. Tang Jung's control of Vici has reached a terrifying level. He can attack in a targeted manner, so except for the new Fishman pirate group, the rest of the people have no idea what happened. Seeing the surrounding pirates all fall down in an instant, and seeing the large cracks appearing on the ground, all of them are horrified. What kind of power is this? Dothan, who fell to the ground, spat out a few mouthfuls of blood, exclaimed in shock. A chi appears fast, disappears fast. But in the entire square, except for a few cadres, there is no longer a standing pirate. Mrs. Charlie on the cliff, the shock in her heart can no longer be described in words. This Tianlong person really has the ability to change the world. After doing all this, Tang Jung stood quietly on the stage and slowly stretched out his stomach before he was asked, "Do you want another 100,000? Chapter 277 Remember Your Promise. Chapter 277 Remember Your Promise. Chapter 277 Remember Your Promise. Tang Jung's voice was extremely flat, making people feel as if he was saying, "Would you like another cup of tea?" Everyone was still immersed in the shock brought by Tang Jung. Looking at Tang Jung standing alone on the stage, no one dared to speak. Is this the ability of the king's qualifications? It was amazing enough to collide with the red hair that day. On the cliff, Shiliu of the Rain said with a big cigar in his mouth. To this day, he has no regrets about being forcibly taken away by Tang Jung, and seeing that he does not exist. It may be his honor to be able to follow such a highness. It is better than staying in the advanced city. At such an age and with such a cultivation base, there is only his highness in the whole world. Old Bard also sighed. He has been with Tang Jung for the longest time, and it can be said that he has watched El Washung grow up since he was a child, but the changes that have occurred in just a few months are too exaggerated. Gerald and Kelly, who were standing beside Old Bud, both had deep reverence in their eyes. For them, immediately below is their god. Tang Jung stood on the stage, glanced at the whole scene casually, and said lightly, "I have solved it, Neptune, don't forget your promise to me." After listening to Tang Jung's words, everyone in the square recovered from their shock. Promise. What did King Neptune promise this celestial being? Almost every one of them guessed in their hearts. Neptune nodded his head and said, "Don't worry, Your Highness, I will arrange it." After seeing the strength of His Highness, he gave him 10 courage to Neptune, and he did not dare to break his promise. With the strength of this mister, if you want to capture the Fishman Island, it's just a matter of thought. At that time, the mermaid on the entire island will still be controlled by him. During the conversation between the two, the cadres who were shocked by Tang Jung's energy level also climbed up from the ground one by one. One by one, they took out the murderous medicine from their bodies and threw them into their mouths. Watching this scene, most of the people were a little confused. What are they doing? The crowd on the edge of the cliff was startled. After taking the murderous medicine, the cadres of the new Fishman pirates' eyes immediately turned red, which made people's heart palpitate. We are the ones chosen by God. How could it be possible to fall here and say that it is too early for us to solve it? Jia O said. Immediately after, a large group of cadres rushed towards Tang Jung. Tang Jung looked at them quietly and didn't say a word. While the cadres made their move, Gerald and Kelly, who were standing beside Old Bud, also moved. In an instant, a mercury tunnel appeared on the cliff, and then 2 people with strong killing and exhaustion appeared in front of Tang Jung. If you want His Highness to take action, "You are not worthy." Grold squeezed his fist and said, "A piece of Kelly did not speak, and a large amount of mercury was condensed on his body. Humans who don't know how to live or die." After seeing Gerald and Kelly appear, Dothan said disdainfully. The figure quickly flashed towards the two of them, and in the blink of an eye, it appeared in the sky above Gerald, and the huge warhammer smashed towards Gerald. Gerald's eyes flashed, and pieces of green armor quickly condensed on his body, but in an instant, the armor has spread all over the body. Looking at the warhammer smashed by Dothan, Gerald did not dodge or dodge, and slammed it with a punch. Everyone was sweating on him. Bang! Contrary to everyone's wisdom, not only did Gerald have nothing to do, but a very deep fist mark appeared on the warhammer in Dothan's hand. Immediately after, the warhammer was released from his hand and flew towards the air. Looking at this scene, the mermaid on the edge of the cliff was shocked. The warhammer made of steel was actually punched with a fist mark. After the warhammer was knocked over, Dothan seemed to be stunned, but at this moment of distraction, Kelly shot. Mercury needle. In front of Kelly, a large piece of mercury needles condensed, and with a wave of Kelly, they headed towards Dothan. "Dothan, be careful," Jiao said behind him. But it was still too late. The mercury needle had already stabbed Dothan's body in the blink of an eye, and quickly melted away in the blood vessels. There was no chance for anyone to react. Job. A large amount of mercury entered the body, and Dothan immediately showed signs of poisoning, headache, nausea, fatigue, body aches and various symptoms quickly rushed towards him. For flowers. In an instant, Dotson covered his head and fell to the ground. Everyone looked at this scene in shock. It was only a blink of an eye from the two of them, and 1,000 pieces had already been knocked down. Neptune. When he was in the palace, he had seen the strength of Old Bard and others, and he originally thought that these two juniors were just slaves. But they did not expect to have such strength, and their age and strength, there is still great potential. How could this young man gather so many powerhouses? As far as the powerhouses who follow to Fishman Island are concerned, it is enough to fight against any of the 4 emperors, right? Dothan. Jiao immediately shouted as he looked at Dothan, who had fallen to the ground. "Damn, I must kill all of you today." Lan Zhang also said. The whole person became swaying, octopus touch, holding a katana sword in his hand, he slashed towards the two of Gerald Go. A trace of disdain flashed in Gerald's eyes, his entire body moved instantly, and he directly took Lan Zhang's attack with his body. Ding ding ding. A series of metallic sounds rang out, but at this moment, the samurai swords that slashed at Gerald were all shattered. Even Lan Zhang himself did not expect this to happen. What kind of defensive ability is this? The cadres who watched this scene were all shocked. Gerald smiled disdainfully, and the whole person instantly appeared behind Lan Zhang, slammed Shen's hand, and directly pressed his head to the ground. Under everyone's gaze, Gerald waved his palm and hit Lan Zhang's head directly. Boom! F's face, and he rushed to the ground under Lan Zhang's head, and suddenly a huge pothole sank. The ground that had been hit by Tang Zheng's chi became even more shattered. Remember, Lao Su has more than just defense. Chapter 278 Don't learn from me to be handsome. Chapter 278 Don't learn from me to be handsome. Chapter 278 Don't learn from me to be handsome. Listening to Gerald's words, everyone looked at Lan Zhang at his feet, who was originally majestic after taking the murderous medicine. Yi Quan's, he didn't even survive a single move in Gerald's hands. The entire octopus head was under the palm of Gerald's palm. It was beaten flat, and the brains burst out, which looked extremely amazing. Tang Zheng watched this scene quietly, and nodded sluggishly. It seems that after the training of Old Bard, the strength of both of them is growing rapidly, and they have the tempering of the fighting field. In the shot, it became extremely profitable. Don't play this trick like me, get rid of them quickly. Tang Zheng said to Gerald in front of him. Looking at his handsome appearance, Tang Zheng knew that Chu must have learned from him. Yes, Your Highness. Gerald said respectfully towards Tang Zheng. 267. After he finished speaking, his figure flashed and Kelly, together with Kelly, killed the group of cadres in one go. Be careful everyone, the strength of these two human beings is not simple. When Jiao saw this, he said what happened to the remaining few thousand. Because of Tang Zheng's chi shock injury, the bones of these 1,000 parts have been damaged to varying degrees, and the strength they exerted has also been affected to a certain extent. In the face of the attack of these two people, it can only be reluctantly resisted at the moment. But this is also temporary. Under the swift palm of Gerald. Turtleman Dharma. Hard armor on the back. It was directly smashed by Gerald. The 2 rows of Niuni's teeth were also shattered by the collision with Gerald. The strong and powerful ability of the firm is fully reflected at this moment, bringing a despairing power. Not to mention that there is a Kelly next to Gerald. As long as he is injured, it is enough to make people lose their combat effectiveness in an instant. After the mercury is integrated into the blood, the terrifying toxicity brought by it is not much worse than that of Magellan, and there is no terrifying sequelae. In just a few minutes, it was almost the end of the new Fishman pirates. With the cooperation of Gerald and Kelly, even this group of cadres who had taken the medicine were crushed by them. Although the medicine is powerful, the fruit power of Gerald and Kelly is even more powerful. All the mermaids and mermaids looked at all this in shock, and they were all fortunate that the Long people were not here to occupy the Fishman Island. Otherwise, with their strength, who could resist? After Gerald punched the last cadre, Jiao, in the head, he took Kelly back to Tang Zheng. Both of them knelt down on one knee and said to him, "Get down, everything is settled, is there any other goal?" After the old buds training, the two have also completely turned into militants. Listening to the two of them, Neptune and the people on the cliff held their breaths and looked nervously at Tang Zheng on the stage. And in the various towns of Fishman Island, everything that happened in the square is also broadcast on the big screen. Almost the entire Fishman Island people are paying attention to this scene. At this moment, the future of Fishman Island can be said to be decided in Tang Zheng's hands. Lord Elva, Princess White Star looked at him with her beautiful big eyes. Tang Zheng suddenly took out Shen and pointed at Neptune. When Gerald and Kelly saw this, their eyes flashed, and it seemed that they were only waiting for Tang Zheng to speak. Looking at Tang Zheng's actions, Neptune and several princes frowned, and their hearts began to panic. "Announce the things that have promised me," Tang Zheng said lightly. "He is not a good person, and he must have certain benefits to help, and now is the best chance to officially announce the conditions." After listening to Tang Zheng's words, the citizens of Fishman Island all turned to Neptune. What exactly did they promise? Under everyone's gaze, Neptune slowly picked up the loudspeaker handed over by the city guards. After glancing at the whole square, he said, "My fellow citizens, today the Fishman Island suffered a catastrophe, but as a king, I did not protect my own people. I am deeply sorry." Neptune did not immediately state the conditions. As the king he must be responsible for this matter first. "Your Majesty Neptune." All looked at their king, each with a different look on his face. While this group of cadres conquered various places, Long Miyaji also encountered an unprecedented powerful enemy. He is Hody. When Neptune said this, he glanced at Hody's body being held by the city guards. Under Hody's powerful offensive, the city guards were no match at all. They were defeated in an instant. And the castle almost fell. Neptune said in a deep voice. Listening to his words, the whole Fishman Island can feel the fierceness and despair at that time. Fortunately, in today's time, we welcomed His Majesty Elva, and when we were almost in despair, Her Majesty came to help us. Shen. Neptune looked at Tang Zheng and said, "As the king of the Long Palace Kingdom, on behalf of the entire Fishman Island, I would like to express my sincerest gratitude to you." Tang Zheng nodded and said nothing. The people on Fishman Island looked at Tang Zheng, and their views on the Tianlong people became even more awe-inspiring. But Lwa Shengyi just came to play and was not obliged to help us, so while we were asking for help, he also made a request to us, and he could also help us solve this group of cadres. Neptune continued. Listening to Neptune's words, the whole Fishman Island understood why this celestial man would take action. But please move along, person, how much will this cost? Neptune took a deep breath and said loudly, the request of His Highness Elva is to select 1,000 young and beautiful mermaid women from all over the island and follow him back to the Holy Land Mary Joa as his for us. The reward for the shot. After Neptune's voice fell, the entire Fishman Island shook. 1,000 cool mermaids. Then you have to scavenge the beauties of the entire Fishman Island. Your Majesty Neptune, then, have you agreed to His Highness Tianlong's request? At this time, a hostage in the square looked at Neptune and said that he had been killed. Yes, Neptune said in a deep voice, hanging his head. Chapter 279 We are all willing to be lazy. Chapter 279 We are all willing to be lazy. Chapter 279 We are all willing to be lazy. As Neptune spoke, everyone looked at their king, even though they were extremely shocked in their hearts. But there is no unwillingness or resentment in their eyes. Compared with being ruled by Hadi, maybe this result will be better. I will give you 1 night to prepare. Of course you can choose to break the contract, but you know what happened. Tang Zheng's voice resounded throughout the Fishman Island. Then they took Gerald and Kelly to the exit of the square. Old Bud and the Empress immediately jumped off the cliff with the help of obstacles and followed. Looking at Tang Zheng's back, no one dared to speak. If you promise him, thousands of beautiful mermaid girls will lead to the lack of beautiful women on Fishman Island for decades, right? But if he doesn't agree, this Yaolong man has the power to destroy Fishman Island in an instant. I am the same. Unexpectedly, just as Tang Zheng took a few steps, Mrs. Xiaoli, who was standing on the edge of the cliff, suddenly spoke up. Mrs. Charlie. 24. Everyone turned their attention to her. To say that apart from the royal family in Fishman Island, I am afraid that the most authoritative people will only stop her and make peace. Mrs. Charlie took a cigarette stick, took a puff, and said, His Royal Highness Elva has brought a new life to Fishman Island. No matter what he asks, we should agree to him. Tang Zheng also stopped, and his eyes collided with Xiaoli who was on the cliff. This woman, the reason why she made such a decision should be what she saw in the crystal ball. After Mrs. Charlie's voice fell, the entire Fishman Island became extraordinarily quiet. Everyone was thinking about what Charlie and Neptune said. At this moment, a crisp voice sounded beside Xiaoli. I also want to be tired. I hope to be able to leave with His Highness Elva. With her taking the lead, there were voices of approval in the square one after another. Seeing this, Neptune finally opened his mouth and said, You citizens don't need to worry. Her Majesty Elva brought you back, not as slaves. Instead, let everyone become Kensne's accompaniment. As soon as Neptune finished speaking, there was a burst of exclamations in Fishman Island. Fishman Island is not far from Mary Joa. Naturally, I have heard of such a popular machine as Kensne and having beautiful women to play with. At this time, after hearing Neptune's words, almost all the women on Fishman Island had a different desire to move. The salaries of playing girls are extremely high, and they will also be protected by Her Majesty Elva. Who wouldn't want to do such a good job? This may be the beginning of a human being slowly accepting us. Princess Odahime's last wish has a chance to come true. Mrs. Charlie spoke again. As a fortune teller, Xiaoli naturally knew more than ordinary people. After hearing this, the people of Fishman Island looked at Tang Zheng with different eyes. Can playing with a girl really become a bridge for the peaceful coexistence of humans and murlocs? Many people are beginning to look forward to it. I would like to be exhausted. We all want to mess with it. In the square, whether it was the hostage group or the edge of the cliff, there was a burst of cheers from women. Even in other towns on Fishman Island, a large number of girls began to seek the kind advice of their parents. Father, I also want to follow Elva Temple to Mary Joa, can you promise me? Mrs. Charlie is right, if it can be a bridge for the peaceful coexistence of humans and murlocs, I would like to devote a little bit of strength to this. Mother, I heard that the salary to play with me is very high. If I can be selected, you will not have to work so hard in the future. Almost all over the Fishman Island, the same voice resounded, that is, wishing to follow the Tianlong people and leave immediately. Neptune and Prince Sanwei watched all this silently, and slowly closed their eyes to say, "Thank you for your trust, my people." He informed that the reason why the people of Fishman Island made such a choice was more of their trust in the royal family of the Long Palace. Thousands of mermaids, after going to marry Joa, what will happen? But knowing that there is such a risk, they are willing to do it. Neptune took a deep breath and continued, "I made a decision before that, Princess White Star will be betrothed to Her Majesty Elva." Tang Jung glanced at Neptune lightly, this old guy is still very scheming. After saying this, it can be regarded as a reassurance for the people of Fishman Island. After Neptune's words were exported, the whole Fishman Island boiled. With the beauty of Princess Baxing originally, the residents of the island are still worried that they will not be able to find a match for her. It is a beautiful thing to be able to marry such a young person. Now I announce that with the help of Saint Elva, the Fishman Island has been saved. Please move to Long Palace later, Your Highness, and we will prepare a grand banquet for you. After Neptune saluted Tang Jung, he take the three princes in the direction of Long Palace and go to 603. Lord Elva, __, thank you. Princess Baxing walked to Tang Jung's side and said to him. Her little face was flushed red, but looking at the look on her face, she didn't seem to be blind to Neptune's arrangement. Tang Jung smiled and said, Bai Xing, come back to marry Joa with me, then I can take you to see the forest, the sun and the moon. Listening to Tang Jung's words, Bai Xing immediately became awkward. Lord Elva. I'm not ready. Then, without waiting for him to speak, Bai Xing said with a blushing face, I'm sorry, Lord Elva, I'm going back to Long Palace first, and I must come to the banquet. After speaking, Bai Xing covered Shang's mouth and quickly followed Neptune and the others. With the departure of Neptune and others, the city guards immediately began to rescue the hostages in the square and dispose of the corpses of the pirates. Tang Jung led a group of people, and when he was about to leave, a beautiful mermaid woman walked up to him. After saluting his emblem, he said, Your Highness Elva, Mrs. Charlie wants to meet with you in private, would you like to show your respect? Chapter 280 I just want to lose my family, fourth more. Chapter 280 I just want to lose my family, fourth more. Chapter 280 I just want to lose my family, fourth more. Tang Jung turned his head, looked at this beautiful mermaid, and said indifferently, What are you looking for from me? Tang Jung remembered that this mermaid was one of the mermaid women who had followed Shali on the edge of the cliff. After seeing Tang Jung staring at her, Miss Mermaid's face was slightly red, and she slowly said, Mrs. Shali said that she will give you some special gifts. After Tang Jung heard this, his eyes moved and he said, Let us lead the way. Miss Mermaid Zan smiled, and her beautiful face was extremely moving. Your Highness, please. After speaking, Miss Mermaid walked in front of Tang Jung, and after making a gesture of invitation, Wei Aokong led the way forward. Following Miss Mermaid, Tang Jung and a group of people left the sea, and took water to the Mermaid Bay. Miss Mermaid took Tang Jung and others out of the ocean current channel. A group of mermaid women are already waiting here. After seeing Tang Jung, they all shouted loudly, His Royal Highness Elva. Tang Jung glanced around, found full of some beautiful young mermaid women. Seemingly feeling Tang Jung's doubts, the mermaid who led the way said, Under the rouge. These are the sisters who want to follow you to the Holy Land marry Joa. Tang Jung nodded. He asked quietly, Why did these people appear here? The mermaid girl who led the way replied in a stern voice, Mrs. Shali made them gather after the request of Her Royal Highness A before. Your Majesty Elva, I would like to take you back to marry Joa. I would also like to give up. I also want to go with Her Majesty Elva. After seeing Tang Jung look over, Miss Mermaid said one by one. Playing is a high-paying profession, and everyone wants to be selected. After taking a light glance, Tangjung ignored the group of mermaids, looked at the mermaid lady who was leading the way in front of him and asked, "Is it a matter of time?" Seeing that Tangjung was actually indifferent to so many beautiful girls, a strange look flashed in the eyes of the mermaid lady who led the way, but she still said, "Just ahead, please take a few more steps, Your Highness." After a while, Tangjung followed her to a large building. "Your Highness, this is the Mermaid Cafe run by Mrs. Shaoli, please come in with me." Miss Mermaid stood in front of the Mermaid Cafe and said to Tangjung. Tangjung didn't speak, and followed her directly into the Mermaid Cafe. Just walked into the coffee shop. Even Old Bud and others who were used to seeing the prosperity and luxury of Mary Joa were a little surprised at this time. The decoration inside the cafe is extremely luxurious, and there are quite a few mermaid women in it. When they saw Tangjung and others walking in, they all saluted them. Every mermaid woman's movements and demeanor are extremely professional and meticulous. After entering the coffee shop, Miss Mermaid looked at Old Bud and the others behind Tangjung, and said, "I'm sorry I can only make you wait here, because Mrs. Charlie said she wanted to have a private meeting with Her Majesty Elva." "Your Highness." After listening to the Old Bud, he immediately opened his mouth. Although he knew very well that there was no threat here, as long as His Highness left his side, it would always make him feel a little uneasy. "You are so bold, how dare you make a request to His Highness?" Gerald also stared at her and said. Looking at Gerald behind Tangjung, Miss Mermaid's face suddenly showed a hint of color. Before in the square, she had clearly seen the strength of this slave. Even the cadres under Hody were instantly killed by him, if he wanted to take action against her. "Your Highness, please calm down. Madame Shaoli wants to discuss cooperation with you, and will also give His Highness something special," Miss Mermaid said boldly. Cooperation. Tangjung felt a little disdain after hearing this. Does Shaoli have the qualifications to cooperate with him? After Tangjung glanced at her, he said to Old Bud and the others, "You guys are here." "Your Highness." The corpse Old Bud was still worried. Miss Mermaid nodded immediately and said, "His Royal Highness, please come with me." While talking about this, I also looked at Old Bud and said, "Please rest assured, we don't have any malice. Please wait here for a while, someone will come to entertain you." Tangjung followed the beautiful mermaid into the cafe, walked up to the second floor and turned a few turns before arriving in a luxuriously decorated room. On a large sofa in the room, sitting a mature and glamorous mermaid, wearing a very violent, ant-hooded dress, showing her perfect figure looming. When Shaoli saw Tangjung come in, she immediately stood up and said, "Second, as soon as I have seen His Highness Elva, you are here." Tangjung didn't say anything, just walked to the sofa and sat down, looked at her and said, "Tell me, what do you have to do with me? If you can't say something that interests me, then you have to think about how to soothe my heart." Unhappy. 2. Shaoli didn't dare to sit on the same sofa with Tangjung, so she could only sit sideways on the chair beside her, raised her hand and poured a cup of tea for Tangjung, then said, "Don't worry, Your Highness, what do you think of the girls in my coffee shop? Woolen cloth. Do you want them all to play with them? Neptune will do the selection, and I have to intervene," Tangjung said lightly. Charlie shook her head and said, "His Royal Highness misunderstood me, I mean their etiquette and quality." Tangjung looked at her and asked, "What do you want to say?" Madame Shaoli looked at Tangjung quietly, and after a while, she said, "Your Highness, I want to cooperate with you." Zhao Hao Hao, it's up to you. Charlie nodded with confidence in her eyes. "Your Highness, I can help you train playmate girls. Although I know you must have someone special to train them, but I believe they will be better after my training. I can teach them how to stimulate men's consumption, how to attract those nobles, and make your Kensni income even higher." Charlie continued. "That's it," Tangjung said with a hint of sarcasm. "Isn't it hard enough?" Charlie was a little stunned. "I think you're mistaken. I built Kensni because I wanted to spend money. I'm looking for a lot of girls to play with and pay them high salaries, all because I have a lot of money and I just want to lose money. Everything I do is to spend money, not to make money. Live it. Tang Zheng said indifferently that he was